Good evening, everyone. Grab your steaks and holy water and dive right into the blood pool here with us on Double Crit. I'm Grillsy.
I'm Tom. We're here to talk about horror sessions in our Halloween special.
So I suppose the first thing for us to sort of get off the on the track with is the different types of sessions you can run inside the horror fear category, and how they work differently and how they sort of play off each other if you're looking for a more mixed sort of
Definitely.
session.
It's very rare that you want to go for the one type of fear, I guess. One type of session.
So I suppose really you got sort of three main sort of areas of fear. You could go and call it horror.
Every time we stream, I do this. Open my stream so I can see what's going on, and I always have it set to live. Set to loud. Anyway, fixed. Sorry.
So realistically, when we're talking about fear, the trade-off really is dread, terror, and horror. I like to think of it sort of more along the lines of anticipation, action, and it sounds a little sterile, but evidence. When you're talking dreads, that feel trying to evoke that feeling of something's coming.
You need to sort of nail the anticipation, not necessarily actually deliver, but like build it up so that they feel like it's about to come out, and then you can do whatever you want then.
And there's even something to be said for a session to be all dread.
Mm-hmm.
But you may end up in a situation, particularly if you're sort of slotting more likely into a regular game rather than having a nice condensed one shot, that you might not get to the reveal. I mean, I'd like to encourage you all that if you have a reveal to get to it in the
definitely
in the time, because you ramp up that dread and not get that release.
It depends too. If you're going for a one session sort of, this is our horror game, this is going to be a horror session.
Like a Halloween special.
Yeah, like a Halloween special session, I guess. You need to try and resolve it, because you don't want to be going over two sessions if you've planned one. Or at least mention it if we haven't resolved it yet, but we will continue this story.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said for the cliffhanger of and the glass shatters and we're back next week.
Look, I'm a big fan of cliffhangers. I'm sure you guys know that from being my players. I try to end every session on some kind of cliffhanger.
Try and mess with this more than a little, and they're like, we reckon we know what it is, but if we keep talking about what we think it is, there's every chance that it's not that.
There's every chance that it may become significantly worse.
Yeah, particularly if we give a worse idea. That's that dread aspect, being that there's something wrong, there's something wrong. And I wouldn't even go so far as it need to necessarily be it's going to sound like a weird way of putting it, like a fear-based dread.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you could get away very closely with off-putting.
Yeah, definitely.
There's something weird going on, as opposed to I'm specifically afraid of it.
Mm-hmm.
And use that to feed in as a lead up to something more like terror.
Definitely.
When you get into that sort of space, and because both of those can make that transition if the cause of the oddness is sufficiently.
I'm trying to think of a good example.
Actually, now that you mention it. The first thing that I'm sort of jumping to, and it's an older example.
Mm-hmm.
The Stepford Wives.
Yep.
Where everything's a little bit off.
Yep.
Everyone's too happy. I honestly can't remember what the payoff in that movie is, but I remember there being that everyone too. Yeah.
Well, 30-year-old spoiler, everyone's too happy because they mind control the ladies with a chip.
Yeah, that was it. So it doesn't necessarily need to be gory. You can get to horror through
Definitely, there's definitely things you can touch on that are scary that aren't necessarily like zombies and ghosts and vampires.
You can get societal with it sometimes.
That's right. Fear of the unknown, or a serial killer is probably more on the horror side than you sort of mean. But seriously, something that's less supernatural and more mundane can be just as scary. You could even go I mean, depending on your group, because you've got to watch out for the minefield as well. You don't want to sort of throw up PTSD into your group from like, you know, if someone's...
You don't want to go deep psychological
No.
thriller of, you know, there's weird shit going on for a group that you're not familiar with.
That's right. You don't want to sort of, you know, if someone might have been through some kind of situation, you don't want to sort of bring back those bad memories. You've got to be careful as well.
Your big supernaturals, it usually gets around that.
No one's been eaten by a vampire.
Exactly. Whereas you've got some, and that's just sort of the risky round. But you get a feel for your players over time. So maybe don't lead off with the really.
Session
gory.
1 shouldn't be so sadistic, maybe.
Ease into it. So moving on from Dread, which you sort of touched on it a bit there with the transition, you move into Terror, and that's more where your action's sort of coming in. That's where that thing is fucked.
That's like the big monster that you're scared you want to get away from, like the thing that you know is coming for you that you're trying to escape.
Exactly.
The room's got no air. How do we get out?
Yeah, fight or flight time. It's the... And it's good to keep your players at that stage, like what do I do now? Like I've got to make a decision, but
definitely,
like the wrong one's going to kill us.
And we've got some stuff on that a bit later on, specifically how to keep that pace going, and how to get your players to feel like they're in that position where they're not their character, and usually they would have more time to make a split decision. But there's some ways you can, some things you can do at the table mechanically, and also...
and some meta and some not.
That's right.
So. Yeah, the Terror really is you see it. Is probably the best way of putting it. Yeah, it may or may not be a jump scare, but once you see it, it's like the moment that they first see the alien.
And it's also sort of ever present too. Like it may not necessarily be right there in front of you, but like it's where it is now. It sort of feeds a little bit into Dread, but it's you know what the thing is.
Well, that's sort of your transition point.
Yeah,
like you Dread, we know there's something here. We know there's something nearby now, and we've seen the tail whip across the open hatchway before us, or something along those lines. It's that shift from it's all in my imagination, what's going on, this is horrible, to there actually being a thing to sort of attach to. And horror sort of bridges the gap between these, so it can stand alone on its own, but it's more. This is where you start getting into like the evidence of the prior to. So it's you walk into the charnel house, and it's all bits of bodies everywhere, blood, or it's the stake comes plunging through somebody's chest in front of you. It's that like it's not always gore, but it's the after effects, it's the remnants, and some of that leads into Dread in the sense of seeing what's happened. Even if you don't actually see the event itself, can help build that. Yeah, there is something messed up around here, like that.
The whole Predator thing, where he like spikes people and displays them to you, like something's bad. You don't know what it is. You can't even see it most of the time, but something's bad.
There is something bad out here, and it's not just somebody wandered off or fell off a cliff. Yeah, something's out here killing you. So, and that's where you start getting the horror. And similarly, in when using it in conjunction with Terror, is that. Yeah, maybe that NPC gets eviscerated in front of you. Like the thing that you seeing it there and being afraid of it is the terror, and the horror underscores that from the ripping the poor red-shirted NPC to pieces.
It's funny because I just thought of this as like if you're all planning this ahead and you know one of the players that wants to retire their character, perfect opportunity. Especially if you don't tell anyone else, it's just you and that player are in on it, or even just you're in on it, and you'll just shred the player into a million pieces and slide him a temporary character for the rest of the session. Don't kill the NPC, kill his character so it's even closer to home.
Extra points if the NPC is there, because there's that moment of oh shit, we thought he'd get it. DM's not pulling any punches.
That's right.
I mean, so that's sort of like the three pillars of fear.
Yeah.
And you can get around probably using any of them individually, but
I reckon at least two is probably going to make the best bet. All three is going to be perfect. You get the best game ever, but if you can hit two, you're probably doing pretty well for yourself.
And I'd suggest that probably your big ones, if you're going to pick any of those two to try and put together, it's probably Dread and Terror.
Yep.
Building that anticipation over the course of the session and getting the release at the end, just from more of a storytelling perspective.
Yeah,
though, if you're if your players are more into like the hack and slash style of combat, they're happy to deal with dialing up the gore a bit and things like that. You can get around it with terror and horror, and like like a very Left 4 Dead style of it's a zombie apocalypse, but we're smashing our way through this. If you're going for that sort of fun, like romp Halloween, as opposed to like there's the elements of terror and dread, but it's all a bit more.
I think it's cool if you do have that sort of hack and slash group to throw in something that's too big for them to handle and they have to deal with tactically. So that's going to put a spanner into them, and that's going to make them uncomfortable, and that's going to you make the dread or the horror, or probably the dread higher, I would say.
Yeah, the dread if they know about it and they've got time to like sort of percolate on it, think and have it like under them, like we can't kill this thing. Like the instance of terror is the realizing they can't hurt it, but if you can't hurt it, can't kill it, can't do anything with what their normal assortment of powers, abilities, equipment, whichever is appropriate to your session, and then switching it, then for whatever reason it gets distracted, goes chases down an NPC that runs away, or because if it's in something intelligent, taking something that's running away fast makes sense. Get it before it can get away and report, and then come back and get the ones that are carrying. And that sort of delay gives them time to, one, you're not just throwing them into it when they're obviously not prepared, particularly if it's not their normal way of dealing with it. But also builds that, okay, what do we do? Do we do this? Do we do that? And definitely you can get away with that sort of mix there.
And you need to build that dread while they're talking about it too. Like, what do we do about it? You need to make sure that they know that there's a time and it will come back. But that's something we'll touch on a bit later on. That's further down my list of things to talk about. I don't want to get too bogged down right at the very start. But if they're talking about it, you need to give them have some kind of consequences to talking about it for too long, because otherwise they're just going to talk about it forever, and they'll eventually just cover a tactic to overcome it or a tactic to escape. You need to give that pressure.
And I suppose that's a good sort of segue there into more of how to evoke that sort of feeling. Like beyond just giving a description, like it helps to lean into it a lot more when you're dealing with horror, horror, terror, dread, fear in general. I'm probably just going to revert back to calling it horror overall, because I keep wanting to say that.
Yeah, that's probably easy.
Like every time I say it, I realise that I'm referring to a component of it.
Yeah.
But the term, the horror genre, is really the pernicious one that sort of sits up most of it. And that's what you see more in a little bit less. It's starting to drop off a bit, I think. Back towards more of that dread style of
definitely
stuff in pop culture. But we went through a very long period of high gore horror style.
Yeah, really, like you'd see the threat real friggin' early, and then they'd be dealing with it the whole time.
Yeah, and then
you knew exactly what was going on, but it's still scary because the threat's so big or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So I suppose just generally being more descriptive. Again, as is all role playing, if you're the GM, you are your player's senses, and you can supplement it by providing pictures or images and things, and depending on what sort of game you're running, that might be relevant. For instance, if you're doing a bunch of cops get caught in something random, give them a police file on the house where it's got some images of this fucked up looking creepy place, and shots of the chalk outlines, or giving them something to see like that they can hold themselves is useful. But if you're not going to have that sort of thing going on, it's going to test your ability as a GM to straddle the line between over description and under, because the more you give, if you can keep your cadence sort of under control and describe as you go, you can really put a lot into not very much.
Yeah, definitely.
And get that across. So
short's going to be sweet in the description too, because if you over describe it and spend too much time on the description of the creature, they're going to lose a lot of that momentum and fear that you've built up because they've been listening to your description for so long. So you need to sort of bring it back and describe it minimalistically, but succeed in describing it enough that they understand what's there.
And I suppose this is a good point to sort of draw that line between the dread and the terror. Like you need that quick one for when you're describing the monster and its thing, but the more slow and not necessarily longer, but the mode of delivery of you enter the house and you feel like a soft breeze across your feet as you move in. The house is overpressured, but you can see that there's holes in the walls and things, whether it's breeze and getting that sort of description out of the way, but delivering it in such a way that it feels understated yet still important. And this is probably the weirdest sort of area you're going to get into if you're playing in an established campaign, particularly if you've been you walk into the room and there's a cupboard over on the side and there's if that's been your style of GMing, and you're in the same game, having that all of a sudden talk to there's a window on your right and it's casting a gleaming shadow, or you start doing that more descriptive thing. It's easy to derail your players.
Yeah, you don't want them to focus on those things too much.
It's like, oh, he's really describing that window. It must be important.
Yeah.
And it's important for setting the tone and everything, but it may not necessarily be specifically important to the story. And if you aren't that descriptive normally, then
you lose a little bit of it.
Because I think it's important. If the only time you ever describe stuff normally is when it's important, that's the obvious result.
So in the past, I typically don't use music and sounds when I GM, but if I've GM'd a horror section of a game, I've always used sounds and music to back me up and build me up. Gets me in the right mood as well as the GM from hearing the music and stuff. It sort of puts a bit of dread. It's not dread in me, but it makes me sort of think more along the lines of a horror thing. It's like if I'm playing a game and I want to make an epic speech, I play some epic music. I don't know why it helps, but it does for some reason. For me, anyway. I mean, it might not help for everyone, but
hey, I'm a big proponent of sound when it's available. I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I got out of the switch to online play. It made it a little bit easier. I mean, being able to run from laptops and stuff now does give that sort of option as well. But the ability to just go, what I immediately think of is whenever when running Bleach, it's like, oh yeah, you're in a fight. Cue Bleach, amp up music.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, in horror things, it really helps. There's some really distinct sounds that you can play in a horror game that I feel really add to the suspense, I guess. Heartbeats.
Yeah,
particularly
subtle ones that they may not necessarily even immediately pick up.
That's right, and there's something about a heartbeat being played that makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah,
it's this unease in the air.
It's like I like having run for is soft wind noise. So not like gale force winds or gush. You can get sort of a breeze flowing through bushes and stuff like that, and having that sort of just in the background, because it's the sort of thing that quickly slips below the subconscious.
Yep.
And the body still responds to it.
You get that sort of hair on edge sort of thing. I remember we played it wasn't even a horror game, it was just like a particularly dark and cavey area. I think it was in Tales when I ran that. And we were going through that cave and I played that. There was this creepy music that I played. It was crypt music. And I played this heartbeat over the top of it. And I played this dripping cave sound.
Yeah, the drips I can remember.
And this very light swooshing wind sound. And it's sort of something that I built up over a couple of days when I was making the campaign. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I wonder if this will work. And I remember the reason I specifically remember that was because at the end of the session, 3 or 4 of the players came and said, hey man, that sound made it so much more creepy and so much more, I was really glued to the screen at that point. And I was like, oh, okay. It's just something I never really played with before.
Yeah, and it helps, if you've got, ambient music is probably easier for it to deal with than, encounter specific stuff.
Yeah.
Because you can lose a lot of it if you've got to stop and fiddle and switch tracks and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's right.
So if you can find a good, general purpose sort of one to sort of sit and run in the background, even if you, have some stuff queued up that you can play over the top of that, and it's easy to just go hit the button on.
And you play it on, have some kind of ambient music that you can play on loop, but not so jarringly on loop. It's got to be enough that they won't really notice when it loops. It doesn't have to be perfect, because a lot of the time if you play it soft and low, people don't notice anyway, but if it's too jarring, if it ends on a horn, you've got no hope.
Yeah, you want I find soundtrack music generally is good for that sort of thing. it's designed to sort of flow under the radar and be relatively consistent. So you've got that, obviously not the lead into if you're pulling like soundtracks from movies and stuff.
Not the lead into the final battle.
Yeah. Like you might take that as a set piece of music if you know that, if you can sort of time when it's sort of coming in. But unfortunately, the tabletop doesn't generally lend itself as much to being able to pull music into it.
No.
Because it's going to take you longer, and there's going to be a bit of question and answer and stuff, and all of a sudden you're out of sync with the music.
Yeah.
So hence the sort of the go back to that like understated sort of background, like the creaking trees in the background and the like the set. I had a great one.
What?
When we were in the when I was running for you guys in Naruto and you're moving through the forest, the one that I had playing then wasn't even forest noise. It was like empty house. Like somebody had just recorded like the sounds of a house where no one was in it.
Yep.
Of everything just sort of moving slightly in the breeze, and like I think it was over several days, and then it got sped up so that it was.
Yeah. Well, in terms of like music for, if you wanted to run like music, the way that I did it last time, I was running Warhammer Fantasy, and you guys were in that house looking at all that witchy stuff. I literally just walked to Google and walked to YouTube and just hit creepy music and picked the one that had the longest runtime, like 7 hours or something.
Yeah.
Like that's going to be background music because a song isn't 7 hours. So you know that it's just going to be very.
Until you accidentally pick up the crazy frog 7 hour.
Yeah, but if it's going to play for like seven or so hours, it was just going to be very low and background.
Yeah.
And it did help with the that session actually. I think it put everyone in the right frame of mind.
Yeah, and it really is hard to overstate how much just that sort of background, slightly subconscious. Like you might pick up the music now and again consciously, but just having it there in the background.
It's almost weird that you don't really think about it, but how much cues you sort of take from the music in movies and things, and it sort of almost becomes I don't know if like muscle
kind of
memory is the
expect
right
it to
word.
be there.
Yeah, I don't know if like muscle memory is the right word, but you listen to creepy music and you start to feel a little bit creeped out.
Yeah, you get that anticipation. You know that this there's cues that this sort of stuff means this.
Yeah. So
it helps you build that dread we were talking about before, particularly if it's sort of ever present in the background.
Yeah.
So the one sort of to go along with that, and it's one that I'm not sure. Generally speaking, I haven't seen it that much deployed that much in games. I know I've seen you do a little bit of it before, and a couple of other GMs. But generally speaking, your tactile sensors describing that in game, even if they don't actually touching it themselves. Something in the background, like if you've got like ooze running down the wall or something. Get the description out there that there's this weird sort of viscous like fluid on the wall, and it looks like it's a bit slimy and it's just glooping down like onto the floor, and getting that, like you get a lot of jokes and stuff about things like people don't like the word moist because it generates like an internal sort of I'm not sure how I'm going to take that out. Just generally discombobulates people. And you can do the same thing with other descriptions. Hell, you can use moist as a description.
Definitely.
That'll do it for... it's just a particularly common one that seems to crop up. But yeah, get in there and have those sort of more tactile descriptions as well. Smells could be important. Try not to be too esoteric with them, because not everyone's going to know what you're talking about. So, for instance, don't say you can smell ozone. Like you might know that that's what you're trying to say, but say if you're trying to evoke an image of something, try and describe it in a way that it is more accessible. That's
right. Like if you were talking about the smell of ozone, I usually talk about burnt out electronics.
Because
most people have had no experience with it.
Or or lightning, or but you tend to find people who've been around that sort of stuff. Like if you want to talk about like a sulfurous smell, you talk about like, well, you can smell like it's like rotten eggs and and making sure that your descriptions are accessible, because nothing kills the mood faster than someone going, wait, what?
Yeah. Someone going, what's that?
It's like, it smells like ozone. I'm like, well, what the hell does ozone smell like?
Yeah. Awesome. Now we get to explain that to you. That'll help the mood, obviously.
So the more accessible you can make it while still being online tends to help
Mhm.
help a lot. Sort of moving along the senses, your visuals as well. Generally, I'd recommend my next point here for role playing in general. It's something that I've funnily enough, came across a lot later, like only in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Kind of born about being more time poor than I have been sort of in the years of gaming before that.
Yeah, for sure.
Where I would have the time to sit down and make a long description of, this is what the place looks like. Just grab a picture.
Mm-hmm.
If you got a creepy house picture, take that. You don't need to hand it over to your players.
No.
But have it there so you can, if someone goes, "Oh, what's it like?" Well, you have a quick squeeze at your pictures, or you've had a bit of a look beforehand to sort of get yourself in the frame of mind. You're like, or you said the dilapidated house, like some of the cladding on the outside's dripping, dropping off to the side.
Mm-hmm.
It's, you move inside and there's, unusually large gaps between the floorboards. Like it's not, and have that sort of stuff there that you can, refer to. One, because when you're saying it, it doesn't sound like you're reading off a script, because you're not. But two, it still lets you hit on the big notes of things that seem sort of creepy.
Yeah, that's right. You don't necessarily have to give the player the picture, because sometimes that kills the mood a little bit. Like if they see it, it takes some of the mystery away.
As well, particularly if you've drawn from something that's fairly current in pop culture or something like that. Like, I know that house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. If I use the house from Hill House, for example, it's like, oh, well, I've watched that. I know that house. Like, I know where you're going now.
Yeah.
It's like you don't want the players to draw the conclusion, especially if you've taken a lot of inspiration from something and you're using that picture to describe, and then they look at it and then that kind of like gives them hints to the campaign. Yeah. Like you don't want to give them that edge.
And giving them the visuals verbally gives them the opportunity to build it in their head too. And trust me, you cannot convey enough horror or terror or dread to outweigh what somebody's own mind can do to them if you give them a little bit in a situation where they're supposed to be thinking creepy and see what they can come up with themselves.
My players hang themselves all the time.
Yeah.
I probably, when I GM, probably like 10% of my time, I have the outcome that happens written on my page. Because the players will start being like, oh, this is happening. And I'm like, oh, yeah, maybe that is happening. And I'll just start jotting down notes. And then, 10, 20 minutes later, something in the campaign's completely changed because someone said something they thought was innocuous. And I'm like, that's an awesome idea. That's actually what's happening.
Always listen to your players, because some of their crackpot theories you go, yes.
The players feed you gold.
Yeah, and in particular in these sort of styles of games.
Definitely.
Like, if something's taking their fancy, just make it weird.
Mm-hmm.
Like if they're weirded out by the fact that you've just described that there's like some weird marks on the wall, and what you were really describing was sort of like there's been a leak because the house is dilapidated, but all of a sudden it's like, what is this fluid? What is going on? We'll steer into the skid.
That's right. Well, think back. It's not so much horror based, but think back. We played D&D back in the day. We were about 15 or so.
Yeah.
And we constantly were coming up against like 4 enemies, or maybe it was 5 enemies. And then we had this like theory, like you, me, and the other player, we were having this theory. We were like, oh, what's the number 5? Like, what's going on with the number 5? It's like, it was almost like the knowing, or like whatever. Is that the one where he's got the number 24 or whatever it is, where he's got that ridiculous notion that's like attached to everything? Yeah. We just had this suddenly had this theory that like 5 was really important. And I remember talking to the GM years later, and he's like, oh yeah, I kind of started to play into it a little bit because you guys were like obsessed with it. He's like, I started to play into it and started making it important.
But yeah, that was sort of getting to the point though where we're like, we've killed 4 enemies. Where is the other shoe?
Where's the other one? So yeah, it's like this. I don't know. There's just some things you can do, and your players just come up with things, and it's completely outlandish.
Oh, and if you get one that looks like a little weirded out or something at some point, guaranteed the other players are probably going to mount on. Like if it's not distressed weirded out, it's just a little weirded out. They'll pile on, and they'll feed gold into. I just imagine if this is like.
That's right. Keep jotting it down.
Yep.
Take the player's worst fears and make it into the reality of the campaign.
Yeah. So I suppose, I think we touched really mostly on the basics at that point.
I don't think there's much else we can go through with the basics. They're pretty well fleshed out there.
I suppose the next point, after you've got that sort of down pat, is you want those sort of fundamentals to help you build like a consistent theme.
Mm-hmm.
And different themes evoke different issues.
Definitely.
I suppose, the way you're dealing with a general survival horror, oh god, we're the last ones left and there's weird things in this place,
Mm-hmm.
versus, holy shit, a witch is taking over the town sort of thing.
That's right, yeah.
You'll use different tools.
Mm-hmm.
Like you'll make use of a lot of the stuff that we were speaking about before, but how you deploy those will be
That's right.
different. And your structure of story too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, on a broad sense, you're probably going to still have your sort of beginning, middle, end with you.
Yeah. I mean, you could switch it around, but it's hard to run a campaign like that.
Yeah.
It's like, that's really much like, I've tried it in the past, time traveling campaigns, and I've tried moving like around points in the campaign, but it's always felt a bit.
Well, the biggest thing I find with that sort of thing is, well, now the players know they get to the end.
Yeah.
Even if your intent is to be running a session or something that's featuring time travel or any sort of
Flashbacks or something.
Flashbacks or anything like that. Even your intent through all of that is, they can really impact the world.
Mm-hmm.
Then, they're still going to have in the back of their minds, we get through this.
That's right. They sort of become a bit more cavalier to it. It hinders that emotion, and it changes the I don't know what I wasn't trying to say. Like the feeling of the thing. Like, you start to become a bit more cavalier. You start to be a bit more cocky because I'm supposed to survive this, so I know I can do it. And it sort of changes how they react with interact with the environment.
And that's the sort of situation where you'll start steering rapidly away from dread and terror into horror,
Mm-hmm.
where it's just a big hack and slash gore fest.
Mm-hmm.
Because
that's all you've got left.
Yeah, because if they know they're going to get through, the dread's not a huge issue.
Mm-hmm.
If they know they're going to survive, then obviously the thing's not as terrifying as it might initially seem if they don't know that.
It's really hard to hit certain themes too. Like, I played I don't know if I talked about it in my inspiration later on, but in the latest WoW expansion, there's an area that's heavily like witchcraft based, and it's like all these different villages and all these different curses and things are happening. There's all this different Wiccan iconography, and the story's very creepy. And I sort of drew very heavily on that when I ran my last sort of game. It was very witchcraft driven as well. But there's ones like, I struggle with zombie apocalypse as a horror setting. It's really hard to nail the horror of a zombie in 2018. Like, 1998 zombie, easy. That was scary. 2018, no.
Everyone now has a zombie survival plan. If you don't, you're lying. It may not be the most fleshed out thing in the world.
No, exactly.
But everyone knows. Get the weapon, shoot it in the head.
Mm-hmm.
Or get the weapon, hit the head.
Mm-hmm. So it's like, there's different types of horror enemy is going to change your themes very, very heavily.
And I think it's also, like, on that front as well, it depends on your session is going. Sorry, your system is going to impact that very differently as well. Mm-hmm. Like if you've got a party of paladins and clerics and running 5th Ed or Pathfinder or something along those lines, right? All of a sudden, smashing some undead is, trivial.
Mm-hmm.
Mind you, the last time that I ran, sort of 5th Ed, was an attempt at zombie apocalypse, and we may as well have had a holy energy free party, given the amount that was being thrown around.
Yep.
All of a sudden, it becomes a real slog dealing with those zombies because they just keep standing back up.
Yep.
Or they never go down.
They're really hard to take down when you don't have that holy energy as backup.
So even within systems, just having that awareness of what your players have got is going to impact on that theme a lot. Because it can make a drastic difference between this is a happy fun slogfest where we're blasting things with holy light through.
Yeah, well, it'll change because even when there is like a crap load of undead and you're a paladin heavy party, there's a point where your resources run out.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, you can still get that sort of dread build up of like, oh no, we're really starting to run out of resources and the undead are still coming.
Yeah.
Like you can still build that.
Yeah.
It's just harder. And you've really got to be aware of the limitations of the system as well.
And I suppose that's where you can get away with I suppose that's where I would be leaning into if I was really trying to do zombies in this day, even if it's like a modern setting zombies or anything. would be I'd probably be steering more away from the dread horror of the zombie itself to the resource side of things. That'd be the sort of game where, your encumbrance is going to matter in this game, guys.
Yeah.
You have this much ammo. It's really...
You're keeping track of each bullet you shoot or each arrow you fire.
And
weapon durability could be
I might say at the start of the game to them that, there'll be chances to find stuff. Yeah, but there's no guarantee those bullets you find are going to be for that gun.
Yeah.
But if I give you something like that, there's going to have been a chance at some point that you're going to get.
Well, that's a good point too, because you can play like high power level games, and if you scale, like if the threats are trivial, if you really focus on the resource management side of it, that can really create a lot of dread. Like if you think about like a Space Hulk game for Space Marines, for example, they don't really care about Tyranids so much. It's when they start to run out of ammo that they start to care.
Yeah, like it starts becoming a problem, and I suppose that's sort of where I was going. I was running a very brief Death Watch campaign, in the sense that the party sort of fell by due to availabilities and stuff not long after starting that. But the big issue that was supposed to emerge during that game was the fact that you guys have been dropped on a planet. This isn't a Space Marine planet. Where are you going to get your ammo from? So in the first session, like a decent chunk of the party was quite happy to just mow down the oncoming hordes.
Oncoming hordes of humans with ridiculously big weapons,
could easily have just sort of stood there and just punched them back and probably done just fine. If they'd been on it, at a decent level of tactical awareness, probably could have gotten away with it. And the one thing that disappoints me about that game sort of breaking up, that group breaking up, then was they never got to the point where this is actually now a problem. So it was interesting.
Yeah,
and it was something that I was looking forward to exploring. So I'd probably lean into that if I was to try to do zombie or even
if I was
just undead in general.
Yeah. Well, if I was going to recommend it for Pathfinder or D&D, like if you were going to run like a horror one and it was a battle of attrition, don't let them sleep.
Yeah.
Just keep hitting them when they go to rest. Just hit them every 3 or 4 hours with another wave, so they've got to get up, and then they don't get their allotment back. That's it.
Yeah. It's just.
So give them that dread. Give them that sort of, and eventually you got to give them hope. Like you can't just keep smashing them. You've got to give them some hope eventually. Yeah. But you just keep pushing. So that attrition is really scary. Like when you start to get really low on abilities, the party's usual thing is to go, okay, well, we'll go and have a rest now.
We've had our one fight for today. Let's go sleep.
That's right.
Yeah.
Tough. The enemy's coming to you now.
Yeah, you have alerted the enemy.
You can definitely build that dread even in games that don't intrinsically have it.
Yeah, definitely. Impending Doom's an easy one.
Yeah.
Sorry, not an easy one. An interesting one is what I was trying to say. It leans heavily onto the dread side. I mean, you're not Impending Doom. You're probably not going to get. You might be able to get horror or whatever, but if your central theme is that doom, that these things are hanging overhead and you never know when it's going to hit.
I think when you have impending doom, it's important. You don't have to have a monster. It can be like a environmental thing, like
the superstorm's coming. Or fucking Sharknado.
That's right. The Sharknado's coming. Here's a silly example, like the volcano's going to erupt. We know there's an earthquake that's going to happen soon. We don't quite know when. There's definitely something to be said for, natural disasters are quite interesting because they do evoke that horror and that fear still, because it's something that we experience in the real world. And it's something that you can't do anything about. You know it's going to happen. Even if you know in advance, it's definitely going to happen. There's nothing you can do to stop it. All you can do is deal with it.
Yeah. And the aftermath to those sort of things quite heavily leans into a couple of the other sort of general themes that we've sort of got jotted down to talk about. Survival again is the first one that jumps to mind. Well, how are you going to survive? You're in you might have survived the actual event itself, but that aftermath could actually be the story.
You're in a fantasy city that got hit by an earthquake. What the hell are you going to do? Because none of the buildings are still standing. There's people that are wounded everywhere. The food source is damaged. The water source is damaged. What are you going to do? So,
yeah.
It plays you a little bit
Yeah.
into like a sort of like a helplessness or
Yeah.
hopelessness sort of environment. It's hard to play those two because you don't want to go too far into how helpless they are because they'll start to feel hopeless, and you can't let the players feel hopeless. The NPCs can be as hopeless as you want. Like they can have no hope at all. They can just not. They can just have given up. But you can't let your players be in that position because the players need to feel like there's some out. There's some way to win.
I suppose
Or fix it.
I suppose the only caveat I'd put on there is that when we're talking about that, my thinking on it at least, Tom, you can chime in if you disagree on this one, is that it's okay for any individual player to feel hopeless at a given point in time. The problem is when everyone's hopeless and they just go, "No, we're done."
That's right. You don't want your players to walk away from the table.
They're like, we got nothing. We can't figure it out. There's no way we can win this. Like, we're not interested in trying. And I'm...
Well, I've been in that position before as a player.
Yeah, I definitely have been. And I've been in sort of the other one where, it's possible to have both scales, I suppose, is the other thing. You can have the, oh God, it's hopeless, all the way across to the, oh yeah, we'll shit this in. What, zombies? Huh?
Yeah, that's right. Well, you can have that on the table too. You can have one person that's like, this is easy, and another person that's like breaking down. And that's okay, but you need to sort of you need to play it, and you need to play it very well.
And if you've got, I always generally hate them, but if you've got good players, decent players, like I won't even say experienced players, because sometimes they'll do it anyway. They might just click with it, or for whatever reason, is they'll play off of that themselves.
Yeah.
If they don't have an idea, and they don't think that they're like, and it's not a situation where they think they could go, yeah, all right, I'm not the most intelligent man in the world. My character obviously is, because he's got 20 intelligence. Yeah, can you give me a bit of a prod on something that I might know here?
Yeah.
But if both the player is going, or even if the player's got an idea and they go, oh well, the character has no idea, and they lean into that, and there's another one that's like, oh, we've got this, who potentially doesn't actually think that and is putting on the bravado, like they'll steer into that, and that can help like a lot. So letting them play off of that's good. So having that mix is fine. Your problems when you get like the whole party into sort of one camp.
Yeah, that's right.
Mind you, if they get too much into the, oh yeah, we're going to nail this.
Yeah, you can start to throw other challenges at them that really, really make them wake up to the fact that this isn't as easy as we thought.
We're dealing with this undead menace, and they've been dealing with like a vampire spawn as opposed to a vampire. Well, guess what? Daddy's home.
Or another one is like they've been dealing with the aftermath. They've been getting all the food in the world. They've been getting all the water in the world for the village. They got that all under control. Hit them with a plague or something. Like hit them with a disease or something else. That's something that's something they don't deal with on that front, but still keeps the theme of the campaign going.
Yeah, there's options there, and there's always something that the players can't do immediately by themselves. They might. I've given up saying that there's things that players can't do. They'll find some weird ass way of doing it.
That's right.
Like,
that's part of the game.
That's all of it.
You don't want to defeat the players, but you want them to feel like they're under the pump.
Yeah. So, as long as you give enough opportunity, enough description, somebody will twig to something that they can do. You might go, "Oh my god, that's an insane idea."
It's fun to let it play out, though.
Yeah, let it play out. I mean, I heard a story not long ago of. I'm trying to remember where the story came from. I'm sure I saw it somewhere. And it was a story from a GM that was talking about the fact that somehow his party had been really primed on the never split the party. Never split the party, never split the party. And they'd taken it as gospel. And it was getting to the point that it had gone from, reasonable, let's keep everybody alive, to, this is just getting awkward because we can't get around anything in terms of, you can all go off in different directions. We'll handle things all at once and then sort of come back to it. Even in town and things like that. So the brilliant idea was, all right, I'm going to put them in a combat situation and I'm going to split them. And that's the thinking as the GM. So he dropped a portcullis while they were in a dungeon and split the party. So the party made there's some weird rules with the portable hole in whatever edition they were working on that you could, you could last in there as long as you could hold your breath or something if you could fit in. So they threw it up on the wall within arm's reach of the person on the other side of the portcullis. The two squishies jumped into it, held their breath, got yoinked across the other side and thrown out of the portable hole to get through the portcullis. And there was supposed to be like a combat on the other side to show them that, you guys like you've had this drilled into it, but you can survive when you're not directly with each other. And I'm like, look, that's the perfect example where
that's right.
like they'll find a way.
Yep. Players always find a way.
So really, so you got a lot of themes to play with there. In terms of, I suppose on more specific things, to touch back on like your witchcraft one, for example, when your horror's coming from a malign entity as opposed to just, for instance, like a mindless zombie or something like that, lean into the fact that thing can learn. If you play as a forever guy, all right, we're going to do this, and then we're going to fort up in that room over there. And they keep forting up in that room over there. And forting up. Yeah, the smart thing's going to figure it out.
That's right. Yeah.
If they take to firebombing everything, they're firebombing the horde of zombies with Molotovs. Well, a necromancer is going to eventually figure out something to do. All of a sudden, you're dealing with waterlogged corpses.
Or zombies in firefighter clothes.
Yeah, it may initially feel when you're sitting there as the GM that I'm just punishing them for a good idea. But if you've got that going on and that sort of thing, as long as it doesn't fit, it doesn't come across as unreasonable that the enemy would know about it. For instance, if your players have, using D&D as an example, if they have a spell and they've not used it in the game in any way that is meaningful to the current villain, there is no reasonable situation for that villain to have a hard counter to it.
That's right.
That's ready to go and waiting for it. And you can be up front with your players and stuff and say, hey, I'm randomly generating this guy's spells or something along those lines, or have the conversation and say, hey, this guy's going to have some stuff for whatever, my enemies, maybe not, I wouldn't be specific as to it, but some of these guys are going to have abilities that allow them to know things about you. Therefore, they're going to have certain things and they're going to learn from you.
Yeah. Well, there's something to be said. Like if you players attack on a villain or their base or something like that, and they get away, they know a whole lot more than they used to know. So you can play into that as a GM, and that's fine. Your players they have their abilities. The enemies have their abilities. If the players start attacking the enemy and they start to take notice of their abilities, that's okay.
Yeah. And
you probably should do it, to be honest.
Yeah, and just from the idea of it's a living world. But that's a particularly important thing when you're dealing with. I use witches as the example. I mean, you can substitute in anything that's
like a devil or a demon or something.
Devils, demons,
ghosts, I guess.
There's that level of. It is as reasonably smart as you are. It's not just some programmed, and this is the benefit of tabletop role playing over video games, or one of the.
That's right.
Being that. Well, you've got an infinite ability in the GM to simulate what this thing's going to do. It can react to the weird thing that the player does.
Right. If the bad guy, if there's no problem with the bad guy focusing on your biggest damage dealer or something as opposed to just targeting the person that's in front of them. Like if I had a mindless creature, sure, it's just going to target the first thing it sees or whatever it's been programmed to do.
Yeah.
But if I'm playing like the big bad necromancer guy, and your spellcaster suddenly throws out and kills like 2/3 of my minions, hell yeah, I'm going to focus on him. Because I don't want him doing that to me.
Yeah, exactly. And so that level of reasonableness is going to be dictated by the level of intelligence of whatever entity you've got in there for your horror game, should you have one, and you're not going with like an environmental effect. So it's keep in mind. I feel like beast and sentient is probably the biggest differential you'll need.
Yeah, definitely.
And if you get to you might throw in like super intellect if you're doing like AI taking over the world, machine horror.
Yep.
Sort of thing, or something more great old money.
It's really hard to play super intellect from a GM perspective, though.
Yeah.
Something we have to talk about later on as well. But
yeah,
it's really hard to sort of nail that because it's like I don't have a super intellect.
Yeah, and it's hard to pull off on the fly. But there are things that can be done to simulate, and I
Oh,
suppose
definitely. Just stopping and giving yourself the time to respond is a big one. Giving yourself the time.
I am
to
not a
actually-
super in like this thing has abilities and stuff. I need to have a think about how I'm responding to it.
Like, this happened in the game in 1 second, but in real life, it's taken me like a couple of minutes to come up with the actual response.
And depending on how like super intelligent or out there the thing is you're dealing with, if you want to try and keep the pace up from a pacing perspective, sometimes do something random and bank on yourself to be able to post hoc 9,000 IQ moment in it. Or like, aha, it shot a fireball, and then later work that in of the fireball missed, and then later on like a wall collapses where the fireball hit and a horde of zombies came screaming in from the side.
Or let the players come up with that reason for you. That's always funny. Put out something that's completely unrelated and let the players draw the conclusion that gets you there.
Exactly.
Outsource the solution.
Yeah. So just because you're not super intelligent, there are sort of options there for getting around it. You have the ability of the retcon in terms of the villain's thinking, and you're not retconning the fact that you missed and hit the wall, but you can make what happens after that thing fit into it.
Definitely, and that's also give the players that sort of feeling that, because they don't know the thought process in the beginning, and it gives them that feeling that oh wow, actually it is really intelligent.
So I suppose that's just a general rule as well for rule of thumb to go by for playing as well, is for not fudging with your dice at all.
Yeah, don't fudge your dice. Let it happen.
Yeah, and don't try and build tension by that hit. Never fudge in direction of harming your players. But if that's probably the first one that I get on there.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, don't fudge to kill your player.
Don't fudge to kill your players, but the big one is making sure that just because it's a miss doesn't mean that nothing happens or a failure. And this goes for GM and for your players too. If they fail on their lock-picking roll, sometimes the door's going to open anyway. There's going to be another flow-on effect. And try and get decoupled away from that you just failed, because otherwise it hands off some meta knowledge as well. Like the players go, I rolled this. Oh, we know that's a foul. That was a horrible foul. We're not getting in there. Well, I was like, well, actually, you do.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I remember reading something. I can't remember where I read it. I think it was actually on Reddit. And I read it, it was like a bit of an article that someone wrote, and it was called like failing forward. And it's sort of like the idea that you failed, but something still happens. Like you never need to have that point where nothing happens at all. You can have something happen and expand on the failure as a thing.
Yeah, the door opens, but you trip the alarm. But you might not know that for another 10 minutes that you trip the alarm.
Or the door opens and it's like you can't relock it. And that might not be a problem right away, but it could very well impact the campaign in 10, 20 minutes time when the security guard comes to do his round and he's like, why is this door unlocked? And suddenly the alarm is raised. So it sort of changes things.
Mind you, one that I always think will work, running on that vein, and I don't think it ever does, because it feels like GM's fudging the dice in your direction one, is you fail at picking the lock, but the reason you failed at picking the lock was because you were too dopey to realise the door was unlocked.
Yep.
Because it feels like an arsehole for just pushing the story forward. But I always sit there and think, I could use that. It's not that, but I know that's what it's going to feel like on the other side of the table. Like if a GM had said that to me when I was mainly playing, probably not so much now that I've got a lot more GMing under my belt, and I can understand that sometimes you say stuff and it's not that, it just sounds like it.
Yeah.
That yeah, but definitely I'd have gone, there's no consequence.
That's right. But you could always go the other way too. You could be like, you fail at unlocking the door, but you hear a clink, and now the door's locked.
Yeah, yeah. So there's that option there. Is always a good thing. Similar with success as well, though I think it's a little bit harder. Is to particularly I kind of like to deploy this one if they get a success doing something that they're trying something that obviously should not succeed. but there was an outside chance and they got a decent sort of roll, and you go, well, no, but it's close enough that it would impact in this way. Like, they're trying to kick down the door, and it's, like triple reinforced concrete or something, like door on a like big heavy duty hinges or something, trying to get into like an ammo bunker or something like that on a military base or something. And they do that and have you succeed in alerting the survivor that's already inside there because they heard the hell of a kick.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, you don't necessarily, like, someone's doing something so far out of their like knowledge or out of their ability. You can always have them succeed, but in a different way.
Yeah.
So getting back to our themes, like, I don't know, I feel like we've covered most of them, but investigation is a hard one. It's a tough one to cover.
Investigation gets exponentially harder the more pragmatic your players are if they can't turn it off.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can only imagine that I would be a terrible person to have play investigatory style games, because a big part of my job for a long time was investigation into things, like not criminal investigation, obviously, but that style of thinking, and turning that off sometimes is hard. Like, I've been making it. I don't know. I assume you noticed in your game.
Yeah.
I've had a couple of moments where I've sort of slipped to the side, and I've been trying to step back from it, but things I go, oh, well, I'll do this because it's one of those things I go easy. I'm going to look under the bed was the one that jumped to mind. I'm like, would my character really do that though? After the fact, like, I'm like, oh, I'm just going to do this. I'm just wandering around looking at the room, and it was supposed to be all nonchalant and that. And then there was a couple of really deliberate things got mentioned, and then I'm like, oh, well, I'll look under the bed, and feel around in there and see what's going on. And after the fact, I was looking at it and going, well, that makes perfect sense from me as a person going, oh, well, the amount of times that you'd hide stuff, and I'm like, I had that moment of just how meta do I get with that? Like, luckily, the character I'm playing is reasonably intelligent. And, from a stat perspective and things like that. It was just a little. I realized after the fact that he was a little too investigatory for what his career is.
It's hard to have investigation, but it's hard to really nail the investigation theme as a GM. It's really hard to sort of set the pacing of the investigation, because you've really got to try and not give the players too much too fast. So in our first session, for example, I didn't give you guys barely anything. But in our second session, because I let you follow the thread, and there was a thread that I pre-planned, and you followed it all the way to the end, you didn't sort of break off and investigate anything else at any point. You sort of very quickly unraveled the investigation. It was like the main thread, I guess. And it just sort of, like, there was roadblocks I could have put in the way, but I chose not to, because I felt like it would be like letting the story, like making the story feel like I was against you. But I probably should have in hindsight. Yeah. And it's really hard to know that at the time as to where you should put the roadblock so that the players go and look into something else for a little bit. Especially if you've got like 2 or 3 threads that lead directly to the thing. Yeah,
and what was probably, I'm assuming, frustrating for you was the fact that we sat there for a while going, all right, do we chase this one down, or do we go look at this other thing that we know there's an issue over there, and it's sort of close enough that it could be related or it might not be.
That's right.
And and given that we're still playing, I obviously don't know, and I'm not going to ask you whether or not they are related. But there's always the thought of, if we'd gone across there, would we have found out more? Would we have found out more? Would we have found out more and rocked up and been more prepared for what we did? Luckily, we quirked out in what we had a bit, and particularly given that it's a new system for us. Although it's a largely new take on an old system. Is probably a bit. There's a few things in there that dramatically change up combat, so they could have quickly gone the opposite direction.
That's right. Yeah.
So there's that trade-off of, you're right, in the time it's hard, but sometimes it's probably worth going, well...
Yeah, I think the thing the takeaway from the session for me was that if I feel like you're getting too close, I should put the roadblock. If I had one and I've already written the roadblock and it's something that makes sense, I should just have it.
Yeah.
Just because
I was surprised
drag it out a little bit.
To use this one as an example, I was a little surprised that the boatman got on board with us.
Well, see, he was always going to, but there was supposed to be more to the threat. It was supposed to be So to give people an idea of what was happening, they largely worked out that there was some kind of witchcraft that had killed a noble, and they were trying to discern what had happened or why. And they worked out that she'd been meeting with a seed, and they worked out that she'd been meeting with a boatman who was taking her somewhere, and they didn't really know what was going on. And they went to speak to the boatman to find out specifically what was going on. And he'd mentioned sort of when they met with him, he'd mentioned that someone was looking for him, and then that was unnerving him, and that's why he was willing to help them, which is what I had written. Yeah. But I had written it in a way that originally you guys were supposed to find him. He was supposed to tell you to go and F yourself, and then you would leave or whatever, and eventually the guy would come, and then he would run to you. But I decided I didn't like that in the spur of the moment. I decided it was poor decision making. I decided I didn't like that plot because it seemed like I was just putting arbitrary roadblocks in the way. Yeah. But in hindsight, it was probably better to have that roadblock.
Out of curiosity, was the reason that got onto that track the fact that we'd asked if anyone else had been looking for him earlier on?
Yeah, well, yeah, it was a little bit
which
that.
Got that sort of information out there.
Yeah, there was a little bit of that, and there was also like, I don't know, there was something to do. There was a few really good charm rolls and social, like the way you guys spoke to him and some certain things that you guys had said that sort of tripped off things to me. I was like, well, maybe he would feel like you guys might actually protect him given who you are and your connections. They were very briefly mentioned, but like it seemed like maybe he would feel a little bit more inclined to go with you. Whereas I should have played his standoffish nature a little bit more, I think. So it's funny, you look back with hindsight on any campaign, you're probably going to have the same sort of thing.
Yeah, could have gone either way
there.
Yeah. There's a couple of points in that conversation, and you mentioned like the good charm rolls and stuff like that as well. But there's a couple of other things that stand out that I figure if I'd been on the other side of the screen, I'd have been going, all right. So that was the in moment, and I think the one that immediately jumps to mind is the weird feeling in the place, the conversation that went between my character and this boatman guy, purely lucky off the chance that earlier in the session I'd happened to have put my character into a situation which was not the smartest player move ever. But it was something I felt that the character had no reason not to think it was a reasonable idea.
Yeah.
So went down the well, got exposed to a similar thing. So was able to have that conversation and start to bridge the gap between the I know that feeling, mate.
That's right, yeah. And that was a little bit of it too. Like you sort of had similar experiences, and that made him sort of buy into the fact that, okay, well, all this weird stuff's happening, and you're sort of experiencing it too, so maybe we can help each other out, because I just want to get out of here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I think if you're going to run an investigation, you need to make the investigation feel... I don't know, it shouldn't feel like it's full of roadblocks, but it should feel like you've worked for it.
Yeah, and that's the trade-off. The thing that immediately jumps to mind when talking about investigation is give at least one progress point forwards. It doesn't need to be a correct progress point forward. It needs to not be locked behind anything.
Yep.
It's got to happen regardless of what your players do in a scene. There's got to be a line from here to there, even if it's the red herring, if it's they find something and they make a mistake and they go, this means this, we're going to talk to this lady, she's going to know the answer, and you're like, that person's got nothing to do with it.
That person's got so little to do with it that she doesn't really have a name. I came up with that on the spot.
It's worthwhile having enough in your mind for just general random assortment of clues, or having a theme in the background, or having a knowledge of what the plan is overall for your big bad if you've got one of those, and it's not just
it's really important when you're running an investigation to not have one clue that leads there.
Yeah.
Because if they miss it, they'll never get there. So you need to have like a series of clues. It's like a crime scene. Like, when you watch CSI, for example, they don't walk into a room and there's one clue and that's it.
No.
And that's how they find the guy.
Like they'll eventually find which one of the clues is actually important.
That's right, but there's several there, and they all lead in a certain direction. So
and you got to funnel them
in,
branch out a bit, and But so having that mix in there, it really is the case of multiple progress points forward, at least one progress point forward, regardless of whether or not it is a correct move forward or a lateral move or a red herring or something. Needs to be not locked behind anything.
You can have something that's timed that leads to the investigation but leads to it too late.
Yeah.
For example, that's probably a good one. Like, it definitely happens at this point, and if X thing happens at this point and it leads to the end of the investigation,
Yeah.
But a day too late or something, and it gives them the closure, and they know what happened.
Yeah.
But they're not just stuck forever.
Yeah. So always having out is probably the big thing.
Yeah.
Again, depending on what the investigation is, if it's investigation into what happened, find a creature that's done something, it's one thing. If you're coming back to that intelligence on the other side, then all of a sudden it's important to know things that you might not necessarily have to have if it's just random carnage number 7. You need to have the idea of why it happened. And whether or not it was intended or if it was an accident, things like that. Because that sort of stuff, you don't have to, it lets you not have to plan out everything in minute detail as to what a person's going to do. If you know that a person accidentally did something, but they're really scared that something bad's going to happen, they're going to act differently to somebody who was malicious and well planned. And you can pull that into your gaming.
Definitely. You take a lot of inspiration when you're running an investigation-based game. And investigation-based horror is quite good. I'm thinking like Dark Heresy, sort of Warhammer Fantasy, sort of that along that sort of vein where you sort of investigate.
Definitely Dark Heresy.
Scary threats, but you still got to go through the investigation process to sort of get there. You get glimpses of the behind the curtain, glimpses of too much knowledge.
Yeah.
The investigation portion is really important to nail, and I get a lot of inspiration from like just dumb crime scene shows. You know, like, as I mentioned before, like my immediate go-to when I'm talking about investigation is like NCIS or something like that. They don't walk into a room and there's one clue. That's my immediate go-to.
There's 15 different clues, and a couple of them are relevant, a couple of them are borderline, and a couple of them are...
That's right. And some of them might give information. It might not be exactly relevant to this threat, but it'll give you something to build on later. And it's some kind of information that perhaps maybe it might come up again later. And you're like, I vaguely remember that thing where that guy had those bites, and maybe it's to do with that again. You can build off things. You sort of give the players knowledge that might help them elsewhere or something like that. But it's just fun. It's fun to have that investigation that feels real, because you don't always stumble onto the exact right path.
Definitely not. I suppose part of investigation as well, and we've sort of touched on it a little bit, is conversation with NPCs and stuff. Like, always important that your NPCs are trying to make them feel real. If you go, all right, just go shopping, guys, and the bar keeps a little bit silly, whatever, so the cost is going to be plus 2%. Like, if that's the sort of, if you're more there for the hack and slash sort of thing, that might get you by if that's what your party's into. But if you're doing investigations, all of a sudden little things become important, and it might not be little things that you're intending, but your players might grasp on them.
Yeah, it's very important to understand what your players are grasping onto as well.
Yeah.
Because if they grasp onto the complete wrong things and you're not doing something about it, they're probably never going to get to the end of this investigation, because they'll keep focusing on those things by mistake.
And in that situation, you've really got the choice of, can I tie this back to the main, or is this just now the main?
That's right, yeah.
And you might have had a brilliant idea for your mastermind in the corner doing this, but they've come up with a reasonable solution that's probably going to be, that should be just as fun to go through and whatever. Just put that on the shelf and use it later.
That's right, use it again.
Use it again. Like,
there's an entire portion of my game which I gutted completely. I wrote more prep for this investigation-based game than I've ever done in my life. And there's an entire portion that I completely gutted and rebuilt from the ground up because I changed what I was going to do at the end of my game.
Yep.
Because there was a point there where I wanted to roll my Warhammer Fantasy game into a Dark Heresy game, and sort of, it was going to be weird, but I wanted to see if I could do it. It was more of a test of my GMing skill and ability to keep the story going than and as an experiment, I guess. But when we got the new edition, I was like, well, I don't want to try and experiment and also try and learn a new system at the same time. So
particularly with the 40k equivalent new system still coming in.
That's right. So I completely gutted that plot line and rebuilt it from the ground up. It's still there. It's just completely different now.
So and having that ability to just go, they're on their own, they're having fun. The story still makes sense because they've made it make sense to themselves.
That's right.
Like, it might take you a little while to figure out what bandwidth they're on. The problem is when you're in the position of they're all on this and they as a party have not clearly enumerated what their idea is.
Yep.
But it's obvious that they're all on the same wave or on the same or a similar wavelength, and it's not close to what you're on, and you're trying to figure out what they're...
It's not poor form to ask, though.
No, it's not.
I mean,
maybe not right there in the middle of that session, but
I mean, we had a GM, and he GM'd a really good game. I mean, we both flash back to this game all the time when we ran Delpers.
yeah,
And he used to ask at the end of every session that we send him an email explaining sort of what we thought about key things.
yeah.
And, you know, there's
If
nothing
you
wrong
build
with that.
no, if you build that in from the start as well, it's just okay.
That's right.
It doesn't see. It's something that you're getting feedback from the player, so you know what they're on. Particularly if it's an investigatory style, it's interesting to see what they think is important.
Yep.
Hell, even if it's not an investigatory style game, it's interesting to see what the players are finding important.
Yep.
It gets people to think about, all right, what does my character know, as opposed to what do I know? Because that's in and of itself an interesting exercise.
Definitely.
Because if you got to sit down at the end, if you sit down at the end of the session and that wasn't even particularly onerous. It was like write down 3 things you learnt or something today.
It was like three things you learnt this session, or three opinions that you have of this, or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was.
It was something. I think it
literally
down,
took like 5 minutes.
I think it was write down 3 sentences that of your character that was either what they learnt, what new idea they had, or something along those lines. And it could be any combination of those. And it gives your players that moment of really solidifying what's happened in the session. In their mind, because they're rehashing it quickly again while it's still fresh, and also getting that, okay, what does my character actually know, sort of moment, rather than just coming back to the next session and being like, oh well, I know everything, but now I'm a little hazy on what did my character actually learn, and what is general sort of party knowledge from the people that has been passed on, and what's also stuff that I heard being said at the table that my character's not actually privy to. And keep
It's interesting that the next point is timing and pacing, given how much tangent we've been on in this episode.
Yep. We've steered into the skid.
We have a little bit. So let's come back to our horror theming. So timing and pacing. How do we keep it? So there's a really important thing I feel in horror games. I feel like it's really important that it feels like it's urgent. Like there's the thing that you're dealing with is really pressing in. The walls are closing in fast, and you've got to make snap decisions. And that could be wrong, but you've got to make quick decisions. So it's sort of like, how do you achieve that at a gaming table where turns are 6 seconds, but everyone sort of acts in order, so a turn is actually more like 3 minutes in real life? Sort of, how do you achieve that?
Well, the thing that immediately jumps to mind, I think, is borrowing from other systems. If you're in a system that generally runs in that sort of, everyone goes in order and that's succession, that's your 6 second turn, and then the next person, then the next person, is moving to things like declare your general intent at the start of your turn.
Yep.
Because that's going to impact on how you might make a shift. Like obviously if you're going to try and attack a thing and it gets wiped out by the person who goes before you, it puts you in that mindset of this is what I'm doing, so they've got that requirement as you're moving through. So it's a little bit more of a push on here's the general flow of the combat's already in mind.
Yep.
And whether or not that works for your group's going to be sort of hit or miss.
Yeah, definitely.
Some are very reactive, some are very like, we want to be in this and then this and then this. Particularly if you've got a really tactical style combat system, or even a really tactically based group, they might be like, we're going to do this and then take 5 minutes to decide the next.
I vaguely remember a system where the players, like, you all move and then you all attack. I can't remember what game it was in, but for some reason it's in my head. So it's got to have been somewhere I've read it. But yeah, you pushing that into people as well. Like you make your decision and then you act on, like, you move and then you deal with that. Everyone moves and then everyone acts, and then everyone moves and then everyone acts. So it sort of puts you on the back foot a little bit when things change in combat, but it still feels very...
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't think I've read that. Oh, I can't remember seeing anything like that. The other one that jumped to mind is, I want to say Exalted had a bit of it, had a separation between declaring and actually doing.
Yep.
A game, like a tabletop game, like war game style perspective, is an interesting one. Is X-Wing, where you've got all your movements and stuff set up.
Yep.
And then it's revealed in sort of order that you go in, but it's already preset.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good one.
So having those sort of things in there as well.
I think just pushing people to make decisions quickly as well.
Yeah.
Like as the GM prompting the decision quickly. So
are
rather
you
than
doing?
letting them think about it for a long time, letting them have their turn and be like, oh, I don't know what's happening, or blah, blah, what are you doing? You need to tell me now. What are you doing? Otherwise, you're missing your turn, or otherwise you go at the end of the initiative, or I'll consider your action a delay until the end of the initiative, or something like that. Like you've got to be on top of it.
Yeah, and I suppose it's worth pointing out this really lends itself more into the sort of in the middle of that triangle we're talking about in terms of the terror. That's where your snap decision making is coming in, and it also simulates that indecision moment of fight or flight prior to coming down one way or the other. If someone hasn't got a decision ready, it's a reasonable simulation of that. I mean, I wouldn't be too harsh on it in terms of like if somebody goes, I want to do this, but I really need to quickly look up how it actually works. Like I prefer them to know that generally, but if you're pushing those snap decisions, someone's going to pull something random out and it's going to take a moment. I would suggest make a call and go to keep the pacing up.
In that sort of situation, if they didn't know the rule, I would just make a rule and go.
Yeah, and then come back later. Even if it's something that you've done before and everyone's just not 100% sure on or anything like that, no one's jumping to mind. Just go, all right, this is it. We'll do that, and just to keep that ramp going. In sort of an opposite to that, drawing back towards the more to the dread side, that you can use that high pace for dread as well, but you can also play the slow.
Yeah, definitely dread. Like if you're building up to the thing being discovered, or to the you're building up the investigation or whatever. It's perfectly okay for that part to be slow, but when you hit the horror part, it's got to be quick.
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry, when you hit
I know.
you know what I mean. When you hit the reveal, everything's got to start happening really quickly and it needs to. The dominoes need to come down.
Yeah, exactly.
If one domino can't hit the next domino, and then there's a pause for 20 minutes, and then the next one comes down. It's got to just start falling.
Yeah. And even timer or something like.
Yeah, that's something I've done in the past. I just set a timer on my phone, and it's 30 seconds or so. Enough time for someone to convey what they want to do. And if you've got a group that's particularly descriptive, you might want to say, okay, you've got 30 seconds to say your action, 30 seconds to do all the rule stuff, and then you can tell me what you want to tell me. But you just got to really be in that position where there's some kind of hard timer set that pushes the players to make decisions quickly. And you may let them roll things to make their to simulate their character's intelligence or something like that. But generally, it's just the heat of the moment. You guys are there's a monster with 1 billion eyes chasing you, and he's gonna consume your soul. And it's like, do I go left or do I go right? You've got to make the player make that decision quickly. They can't really sit there and weigh up the options because the character doesn't have time.
Yeah, they can't sit there, pull out the map and go, all right, so left is going to give us these options.
That's right. They might.
The only time I would make any sort of allowance on that front is if you've got there's some situations where there's the one that will really annoy Tom that jumps to mind is if you've got Jedi in Saga Edition, it's like want to turn left is a bad idea.
Yep.
and as long as I vaguely remember that being a swift action.
Yeah,
it was reasonably quick to be able to do. So I'm like, or if there's some systems have abilities where you know your local area like the back of your hand or something like that.
Yeah, if you have an eidetic memory or something like that, and you ran, you're like, which way do we go? And you're like, you've been here before, you'll know. I'm happy for things like that, but I think you've really got to push your players to make those decisions quickly so they can make those mistakes, and that really brings you back to the horror feeling. Yeah, because otherwise you very quickly lose it.
Yeah, and I suppose the memory sort of ones, I can understand you still putting that pressure on because just because you can remember it doesn't mean that you make that decision quick enough, and you can be forced into one of those choices.
Oh, you're running and you go left and you're like, shit, I should have gone right. You're like, you've already turned left. It's too late to make the decision to go right now. Yeah. You just went left instinctively or something. Yeah. But you really need to give them that feeling of being overcome by the whatever it is, the thing.
And I suppose the hardest thing to simulate really though is if you've got a mismatch in, for lack of a better way of putting it, fear resistance amongst the characters, either mechanically specifically or from a narrative perspective that there is a good reason why for some people this is I'm standing here pissed my character's perspective is sit here pissed my pants scared versus someone else going like what no and how that plays into pacing as well.
Yeah, well, that's a good point too, because if someone's got Fearless and the big monster with a million eyes is there, are they scared or is it more I know that thing can kick my ass, I'm out here?
Yeah,
and then it sort of becomes the power level sort of situation whether they can beat it or not.
Yeah, it's sort of the difference between they're fleeing or they're retreating, and having that, and if it's flee, ramp up that speed as much as you can make happen.
Yep.
If it's retreat.
Yeah, you can slow it down a little so they have some thought.
Yeah, particularly if you like in that sort of thing where you got Fearless, and there's nothing wrong with making mention. I probably did not do it at the start of combat, but I do it earlier on and go. Yeah, if you have Fearless and things like that, we're doing some like I've got a timer here for turns or something. If you've got Fearless, I've added to your timer, but I won't tell you how much I've added to your timer. But you've got a little bit more time to make your decision to simulate the fact that your character can think more clearly.
Yep.
And sort of have that there and the trade-off there. And that's what it's there to simulate is that flight versus a fighting retreat.
Yep, that's right. You need to consider that as a GM, but the players need to feel like their talents have meaning. Like you can't have the player that spent the experience on Fearless running away in fear. It doesn't make sense. Even if it is a supernatural fear, it shouldn't really, he should still have something for that thing that he's spent experience on.
Yeah.
We've already touched a little bit on threats. There's only really one I want to sort of touch on extra in addition there. We've talked about natural disasters. We talked about, the threat needs to sort of be deadly and scary to force you to retreat sort of thing. One that's interesting, one that I find would be interesting would be like a maze or a building that you need to solve, but it moves.
Yeah.
And rearranges.
The old Hogwarts stairs, for like a better way of putting it. Yep. It just goes somewhere else now.
Yeah, that's right. You're running down the hallway and suddenly the hallway turns into a dead end. Sort of like, as long as you set some kind of, there's been like grinding or something like that, some kind of way to know that this has been happening. You don't want to sort of dump it on someone in the final minute. No. Yeah, there's just sort of
there needs to have been some sort of like lantern hung on it earlier.
Yeah, but I think it's definitely a cool concept. Like you're running away from the evil monster thing in the labyrinth, and suddenly the labyrinth's changing, and you're sort of whilst you're trying to. It's the whole maze runner thing. Like you guys run the maze every day. How do you not know the layout? And it's like, well, because it changes every friggin' day. We know that there's segments. We know these are the segments, and this is the layout of each segment, but we don't know where they are at any given time. So it sort of gives you that sort of. You're scared of the building now as well as the threat that's in the building.
Yeah, and I suppose touching off from that to a certain extent, and one that I got jotted down is to talk about sort of illusions and hallucinations. And depending on the game that you're playing, that could be a significant portion of it. Like if you going your more mundane horror sort of thing, maybe not so much. But if you're in like trying for a horror-esque
psychological horror,
messing with people's perception is perfectly fine. Obviously, there's components to it like saving throws and things like that. I'd recommend for if you're going with like illusions or stuff, maybe this game for this session, particularly if it's a little harder if you're going for a campaign or something. Yeah, I'm going to roll your certain of your saves behind the screen. So you're not going to know that you don't necessarily know something or that you notice something. And to get that sort of, didn't notice that the door wasn't latched.
Didn't notice that their friend was gone?
Yep.
Or didn't notice that their friend went a different way to them?
Yeah, or to simulate all that sort of stuff and getting that in there gives you that loop. And I think that's really the only way to make illusions work from a fear horror perspective in games. Like you can still make illusions and stuff work in other games, but if you're going for that sort of feeling, it needs to be, wait, something's weird here, and this is obviously wrong, but I don't know why. Versus, oh yeah, I failed my save, so I know that there's something going on.
Yeah, that's what takes some of that meta knowledge out too. Sort of, your friend. You don't see your friend, but you don't know what happened.
Or conversely, you see your friend,
That's right. Yeah,
but
that's right.
he's actually 3 rooms back.
Well, that's something else I have written down, which is a pretty good one here, which is doppelgangers to see discord and doubt. Like a really cool bad guy for me is like a doppelganger, like a changeling or something that can change its shape to look like you or mimic you. It's just interesting. Like little Timmy walks out of the room for 5 seconds, and little Timmy comes back, and he seems all the same. So you keep going, and next minute he's like fist deep in your friend's face.
Or even from that, like the subtly different. I you ramp up the difference as you go, but and if anyone picks up on it, it's going to quickly start doing that anyway.
That's right.
But just little things that make it so maybe speaks with a slightly different cadence to his voice than you would normally use for that character, or
he doesn't have the same sort of steps. Maybe like things that highly perceptive characters might pick up, but maybe lower perceptive characters won't. Yeah. You can sort of give them that information. Later on, I've got mentioned to using note cards to help with that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And giving people note cards to say, you notice something weird's going on, and seeing what they'll do.
Yeah.
If you notice he's come back and he's got a bit of a spring in his step, whereas before he was saying he was tired, or sort of sow the seeds in the party. But just
he was cowering a lot before, but now that after doing that little bit of a wander out and whatever, he seems reassured. Like, well, is that reassured because he's been off on his own and nothing happened to him, or is that reassured because something's changed?
That's right. And sometimes, like, to skip forward a little bit in our discussion, sometimes it's fun to hand players cards that say nothing, or that say like shh. They make people think that character knows something, but they don't know anything. And it's something I have done in the past with a group when they were sort of in that sort of situation. And it sort of enhanced it. It made them sort of not trust each other a little bit more. So they're sort of using their meta knowledge against them a little bit. Because they're going to notice when you hand someone something, or you send them a message on Messenger or whatever, and if they're in the same room, they're going to notice that that's happened. But just sending them nothing. Sending them this card is intentionally blank. Like, just nothings, and it just sort of makes them think, well, what do they know that they're not telling us? Like, why aren't they telling us what's on the thing? It's like, are they involved? Like, what's going on? Sort of, yeah.
So, and using those cards is an example is a good option for not breaking, particularly if you're looking at hallucinations and illusions and stuff as well, or even the doppelganger to a certain extent.
Yeah, letting the person play out that illusion as their character, sort of thing.
So not everyone knows what the other person sees, or conversely, depending on how like you're behind the screen rolling or whatever goes for their saves and stuff, it might be easier to hand the person who actually sees the truth, the thing that says like this, there. Just write down something along the lines of, there is a door in this room that you can see on this wall. And then describe, and as you're doing that, describe to everyone else that, oh yeah, you walk into this room and there's, sort of 4 walls.
Yeah.
And, there's pictures and stuff, but there's really only the door you come in on.
It's funny because you can play the players off each other, especially if you're rolling the perceptions and things, like the defenses yourself. You can make the person that actually knows the correct answer
think they're the ones that don't.
That's right. You can make them think either they think that they don't, or everyone else thinks that they don't. It's like the majority generally will rule the roost. The majority is generally in charge. So in a situation like that, one person sees the door and everyone else is like, "Shut up!" Like, obviously, there's not a door. We're here.
Yeah. Just some of the stuff that you invest in. And again, that changes depending on what systems and stuff that you're running.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. Sort of, if you've got a paladin in your party and there's a malevolent changeling, well, it's very easy for them to detect what it is. So it's kind of pointless to have that. I mean, there's ways around it, but that's a general consensus. That's pretty much a moot point now. You don't need to do that.
Yeah, and the other one's a gentle one. Like if you've got an appropriately level mage in a party and there's a lot of illusions and stuff going on, you've got to be aware of the fact that maybe they've got counterspell. Or some mechanism for determining it.
That's right.
So being aware of that sort of stuff in your party, something that automatically bypasses your planned illusion or something like that. the one that jumps to mind that messed with me a lot, because there was a period in the Naruto game I was running for you guys where prior to, I want to say it was Jim's character ended up with tremor sense, and prior to that I was able to get away with a lot of stuff just based off of illusory stuff and things that I was getting around messing with her. That sort of dropped out of the game a lot because simulating a tremor in the earth.
Yeah, well, if you go into the trouble of simulating an image and a tremor, you may as well just create the thing.
Yeah, it was pretty much it. It became a case that threats ceased being ethereal. I wouldn't say ethereal, but yeah.
I mean, it's a good word to describe it.
Yeah, the more or there was a marked shift from describing it as an illusion versus a hallucination, because they're two very different things. Yeah. One is the illusion is you create an image out of nothing that people can see. The hallucination from a power perspective is you force a person to see something.
Yep.
And those are two very different things, and that can trade off how you structure your game as well.
Definitely.
Because if it's a hallucination, you've got to be ready for the fact that people will resist it and they won't see this. If you're able to create an illusion, then the question becomes, do they notice that it's not real, but they can all see it? And that translates differently.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's the sort of thing to sort of be aware of. Or if you're using a mix and really throw people off, is the idea that everyone can see this one and it's obviously fake. But then sometimes no one, you're the only one that sees it. So is it different?
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely cool.
I suppose off the mentioning the rolling for your players as well, particularly if you're using physical dice. Yeah, Phantom rolls.
Yeah, just roll the dice for no reason. Just sit behind the GM screen and every now and then just chuck a dice.
Useful generally. Really useful if you've got horror, because it's putting that idea in their mind that something's happening, even if there might not be.
Something's happening that they don't know about, and you keep rolling dice, and you keep not telling them anything, and they sort of start to build up this apprehension of what's going on. Like, how stealthy is this thing? Or, what's he rolling for?
Yeah, and you'll find that players as a whole, I don't think I've ever met a player who thinks they're luckier than they actually are. But I've found plenty of players who think they're unluckier than they actually are.
Yep.
Because everyone remembers when things go wrong, like really wrong.
That's right.
Particularly in a game where you've got like lots of successes generally, but if you're role-playing, you're playing heroic in the sense that your game you'll tend to succeed.
Yep.
Like it might not be like a perfect, might not be a perfect victory, but you'll have a the general assumption with your games is, if not success, survive, and then, it'll depend on your systems. But
definitely, yeah. But
there's a general theme of we're playing the game, and the idea is that we're going to have fun and succeed for the most part, but we might eventually die at some point or fail or something. But in order for everything to keep going, there's an inbuilt, a certain degree of success. But quite often people think, oh, well, we're screwed. If it comes down to a dice roll, I'm unlucky. This is terrible. The GM's been rolling crits all last week. And you remember getting whooped 4 times, but they're forgetting the fact that they had 20 rounds of combat.
Yep.
And they were the only members of the party who happened to cop it.
It's always funny when people talk about like unluckiness and luckiness, and it's like, it's random. Like, like especially when we're using Roll20, like it's quantum random. Like it's definitely random.
Yeah, it's not a weighted dice yet.
Like they haven't specifically designated your account to roll less than 5. Like,
so you can have an unlucky streak. You are not in and of yourself unlucky to the point that it's going to. But because there's that sort of inbuilt assumption, the more obviously don't just sit there and just roll. But as long as you're getting enough going on in there, and people are going to start to think we're due to fail. Or it's due to succeed. Either way.
Another funny one is to make them roll things randomly as well.
Yeah, just
they will
roll a d20
for me. Perception test for me. Or roll a d20. Or can you just make a will save? It's completely irrelevant.
Yeah, it's your opportunity to gaslight your player.
Yep.
Make them think that something weird's going on when, like, you can. I am still convinced that it is entirely possible to run a horror game where you're literally just in an empty house.
Yep.
Just by gaslighting players.
It definitely is. And I definitely feel that pressure too if you keep asking them to roll things and you keep rolling things behind the screen. Especially if you roll a dice and then say, can you roll something? Like, can you roll the dice? Can you roll a will
It
save?
makes it feel opposed.
They're like, oh, this is an opposed roll. Like, I could lose. Like, what are my bonuses here? Like, what's going on?
I prefer that opposed style because it's harder for them to be able to go, oh, I rolled really high, therefore it's good.
Mm-hmm.
Or really low, depending on the system.
Yep.
It becomes a case of, yeah, but how good's the other guy?
Yeah, well, it's like, I succeeded by heaps, and that's more than I'd usually succeed by. But you didn't tell me anything. So how good did the other guy succeed?
Yeah, you can really get into the weeds of messing with people just by...
If you're like me and you have a terrible poker face, you can just play into that too. You can just throw your dice and be like, really ham it up. But yeah, fan of dice are fun. I think another one is playing into the cliches. You don't have to be scared of cliches. Cliches aren't lame. Cliches are cliches for a reason. They work.
Yeah, cliches are bad or when they're done bad.
That's right. The reason that cliches are a cliche is because it's worked so well that people keep using it. So there's no point. There's no problem with using it. Just use it well.
Yeah.
And pay attention. Like read the room.
Yeah. Going off of that cliche, it's similar in the sense when I think of archetypes as well.
Mm-hmm.
For NPCs and things too. Yeah, the gruff dwarf is like no one's really going to call that out.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy. It's something to remember. But if you want to make them interesting, it doesn't take much to like a slight tweak on what the archetype is.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't need to go and create something wholesale, particularly when there's that thing. And you can play off expectation as well. If they expect that this dwarf is going to be grumpy,
mm-hmm.
and it turns out to be the happiest, like pristine, clean, prestidigitation using motherfucker, who's always immaculate and not rough, tumble, stonework. No.
Yep. no ill-mannered dwarves here.
But you can use the opposite of that as well, and perhaps even more effectively. Like that's an obvious, like a particularly obvious one used as an example, is the sense that that's quite obviously a non-archetypal dwarf, but you can wind that in and tone it down and have, particularly in horror, it's like, well, these people, I'm used to this character. It normally would do something like this. Mm-hmm. It's done something like that, but it's a little bit off. Now, is it a little bit off because something weird's going on? Or is it a little bit off because the character's just a little bit more fleshed out?
Yeah.
Like, is it important that this thing that I'm reasonably familiar with, the general archetype, is off? Like, did the GM put the effort in for this random NPC for a reason?
Yeah.
Or is it just that a flight of fancy at the time they went, oh yeah, this dwarf, it's going to be French.
Mm-hmm.
It's not your sort of standard issue Scottish.
Yeah. No, it's good. It's a good idea to have like those differences too, because it adds a little bit of wonder and a bit of a real world feel to it. And like as you said, you can use it to sort of you can use it to gaslight the players into thinking it's relevant or irrelevant. Yeah. Either way or either or. Another fun one that I feel is playing off players' fears. So an example was those snakes. Like an example was that
that was hilarious.
That leech situation. The player just the description, and he immediately leaped to snakes because he's scared of snakes.
So that was going on for ages because it was probably a good hour before you actually encountered the thing itself.
Yeah.
While you guys were going through that
raining leeches or whatever.
That's how it ended up. But just like the sound of it, like I must have been describing it as you hear something like moving through the undergrowth. Or, it sounds like there's something sliding along and stuff like that. And because the player in question had a particular, pre-apprehension with snakes, that was where they went. And
And they were gaslighting themselves.
Well, they're convinced that they were being surrounded by giant snakes, and then leeches fell on giant leeches fell on their heads, paralyzing them.
Which is gross and creepy in of itself.
But
they had that extra fear because they were scared of snakes and something was slithering nearby. They had that extra level of fear on themselves. So if you know your players well and you know sort of fears that you can play off from them, play it up. We've had players that are scared of spiders, giant spiders, you know.
Yeah. So either use them or allude in a way to them that could be interpreted as that. Let them run off on that, even if it's not the thing.
And just let them build up that extra level of fear in themselves.
Like, if they've got a fear of spiders, dial up the amount of cobwebs in the abandoned building. Like, you make it a little bit more prominent. Like, it's not so that it seems important when really you're just giving that little bit of extra detail to the room.
That's right.
Yeah, it's an old, and then if they try and call it was an old dilapidated building. Of course, it's got cobwebs through it.
That's right. You can definitely play up things like other players' fears. It's definitely something you can do, and it works.
Yeah,
it just helps add that level of horror, that level of fear to the game.
And it sort of reiterates what mentioning it before, that nothing you can come up with is going to be as good at messing with them as their own mind.
That's right.
They know what's going to mess with them. It's a significant sort of shift.
Definitely. Right, well, I guess we're on to sort of inspiration, like sources of inspiration when you're looking at horror, at running a horror game. So how do you sort of get to the point where you're confident in running a horror game? Sort of, what do you take your inspirations from?
For me, a mix, different mediums. Like I won't claim to be a widely read horror.
I definitely don't read a lot of horror because I'm too big of a pussy.
I just have never overly enjoyed it.
I'm flat out watching a horror movie. I can't imagine going through like a week of reading a horror book.
Yeah. So the things that immediately jump to mind, and perhaps it was something that was worth touching on before. If you're doing something like great beyond style, cosmic entity horror, go back to the granddaddy. Read Lovecraft.
Can't really skip like the Cthulhu lore, the
like a lot's built up around it and sort of been patched on over time as well.
Yeah.
But particularly if you're looking for something period, like you want to go, all right, well, I want to run something
Victorian sort of era.
Yeah, go back and read it. Like, it's interesting. I would extend that to, particularly in the Lovecraft sense, to extend out to even if you're not running the system, but you want to use that sort of thing. Go read Call of Cthulhu. Go have a flick through. Like, not necessarily read the whole system, obviously, but go read their little inserts that you get between chapters and things. Get those sort of creative juices flowing. It gives you an idea, and look at the art. It'll give you, a way of describing the world in your own. And similarly, if you're looking for something a little bit more modern, in inverted commas, it was not from a case of it's not really modern. More from a case of not so much a modern setting as in a more modern writing. Stephen King. Yeah. And you sort of cross the boundary here because you can start to pick up movies and stuff now instead of particularly if you have time for it rather than reading it. But go read it. Shit fucked up.
Yeah, the new movie didn't really do it justice, and the old movie didn't have the technology to do it justice either. Yeah, but it's it's a very, very, very creepy story.
And I suppose the lessons taken, particularly out of Stephen King, is the reason why the dread and horror in those stories work is because he takes the time to give it grounding. It's that building of dread. Like you get to connect with the characters a bit before everything goes to hell. So getting that sort of feeling from it. And TV shows and movies.
Well, for me, Haunting of Hill House is the most recent thing I've watched.
Tom was berating me a bit about the fact that I haven't watched it.
I think everyone should watch it. It's a fantastic show. There's a lot of mystery. It's very, very, very good at building your dread.
Mind you, I was also sitting there being annoying by suggesting that maybe it's a book. as well. I'm not 100% certain
Oh,
on that.
I don't know, but it does see this. It sort of starts the way of a book. Like the main character, sort of the very opening scene has like a quote that he says. I can't remember what the quote is off the top of my head, but there's like a quote that very much seems like the opening line from a book. It'd be like the hook that drags you in. But it's very, very well done, and it just gives you, or what you constantly the whole way through the show from start to finish, you have this constant feeling of impending. Just
Something's coming.
Something's going to happen. Something's coming, but I'm not quite sure what it is. And there's plenty of twists and turns, but they don't feel like they were beating you over the head with it before you get there. Like a lot of the twists, I was like, oh wow, it's just got that. I don't know. It's just very, very well done, I would say, and it gives me a lot of inspiration in terms of horror in what you can do and what you can sort of allude to is going to happen and then not having it happen, or it does have that. There's a few points where you expect a jump scare but there isn't one, and that the whole time that it's sitting there in the room and you're expecting the jump scare to happen, you're sitting on the edge of your seat. You're like, I'm ready for this jump scare. You build yourself up so much and there's no jump scare.
Music's probably messing with you too a bit at that point.
Yeah, you're so highly strung by the end of it that you've gaslighted yourself. Like there was never any implication that was going to happen. You're just so used to it happening that
you're so used to the quick cut at the end of a conversation away to whatever's happening next, and not just the. Wait, why are we still looking at this room? What's going to happen?
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. It's so well done. It's definitely good for understanding twists and understanding what you can do in terms of building fear slowly.
From the TV side, for me, I sort of lean towards True Detective, the first season in particular. Not so much for if you're looking for one shot for your horror. If you're looking to string together more of a longer form game. It does a really good job of, one, it draws on a sort of a large back catalogue of lore that's floating around in the world already, in terms of it's pretty old at this point, but I'd rather people go watch it once, then find out what's going on, then go back and watch it again. Rather than go too deeply into it. But it does a really good job of, there's something going on, there's obviously something weird, there's there's some red herrings thing, but there's this pervasive sense that something is wrong in the area that it's happening, and it's not just mundane wrong. It's something is, the whole thing is just built around there being something off. And you've sort of got there's two characters in it. So you've got sort of the guy who's, for lack of a better way of putting it, the straight man, who's like, nah, it's just a straight out. Then you got the guy who's slightly more susceptible and open-minded and a little bit weird, but he's not like off the wall, at least not to start with. And it gives that concept, the dueling of options, and the fact that there is there is reasonable explanation for a lot of this stuff. And it could just be a mundane thing, but there's enough that's sort of sitting there that has you constantly going, but is it just? and if you could get that sort of thing happening in a game, that I think that's great. The idea of this is pretty straightforward. We've got this. But there's a loose thread. And wherever we go and whatever clues we find, we get what feels like an answer. But there's just always something.
There's that nagging question, that loose thread that you could always follow, and it always feels like it's unrelated, but...
And they're all sort of, like, they're vaguely similar. Like, it feels the same, even if it's not necessarily the same type of clue or loose end or... So I find that a good one. Movies, my go-to one. I only added one for our little discussion list here on movies, and it was The Descent. Just the whole thing. You get creepy creatures. You get just I'm trapped underground. Like that sort of style. Even without the even in moments when the creatures are nowhere near them. One, there's the just general dread of they could show up. But there's also the fact of, but I'm resource poor, I'm deep underground. It's not like help's coming anytime soon, and getting all of that sort of ambience into it. It's dark. It's sort of like a big mashup of everything, and I think that it does a really good job. And I recommend going and watching it, and then slowly blowing your mind when you try and pull together some idea for making a similar thing happen. Like it was so close that the first time I watched it, I went like, surely there is a dungeon delve here somewhere, and one that's not just a case of we go in and kill the stuff.
No, yeah,
it is messing with it's there to mess with the players a bit. Like there's combat, they're probably going to be alright as long as you can keep the fear up and the resource drain. Yeah,
and playing off that preconceived notion too, like maybe they did go to the dungeon and expect to smash everything, and now suddenly it's a whole other kettle of fish.
Well, we fell down a long way, so we're not getting out to resupply anytime soon. We've got in a fight and managed to cave it in the tunnel behind us. So we're on a clock.
We're on a clock. Our resources only go so far, and we're not going to find a resupply in a cave most likely. So it's definitely
at least not one that's going to be tasty.
That's right. It's definitely playing off that sort of, I don't know, the preconceived notion that you're going to go in somewhere and kick its ass. It's interesting to sort of give them that turnaround where they can't, or they go in and then suddenly, oh god, we didn't plan to be in here for so long.
Yeah, and it's an opportunity to play some things to the hilt that often don't. Like the first thing I sort of go back to there is Tucker's Kobolds. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the concept at all.
I think so.
It was floating around the internet, and it was the you going through a kobold den, and these things are actually going to play to the hilt. They've got like half-size tunnels, so they can move around freely, but you can't. They come out and they'll attack you, and then run. And it'd just be like a guerrilla tactics slog getting through this. You never know how many of them there actually are. Like every time you kill one, there just still seems to be some there. They're throwing stuff from higher levels down onto around you as players. It's like it's a whole mess of like CR1 quarter creatures or CR1 half creatures using the D&D / Pathfinder terminology. That can really do some, like, just by death by 1,000 cuts. And it lets you, and the idea of playing a more horror / fear and dread based games, you do that, you get hit by a pack of these kobolds at any time. They can come out of any wall and just be there. Like, you never know. Or maybe you've got a dwarf going along and he notices and makes mention of the fact that he's seeing stone that doesn't seem right, or it looks like a doorway, or or whatever, and you get down there and tap it, and there's nothing to grab on your side. You don't know there's not like a mechanism on the other.
That's right.
And playing up that, and just the case of even something that seems normally insignificant, remembering that it's a monster and it has a will to survive, and you're in its home.
That's right, yeah. And it's interesting that because that story really fleshed out. I think that at the end of that, I think the players came out like maybe one or two survived or no one survived. I can't remember.
Yeah, this is I think it was like a level 8 or 9 party. So kobolds should have been
a piece of piss, but because of the situation they were in, the way that they played it up, it was very much like the kobolds very much won. And it's you can definitely play. What am I trying to say? They obviously should have won, and they didn't, and it felt scary. And reading the story back and reading what the guy talked about and how he'd done it and why he did it, I don't know, it was very interesting. It's very interesting. It seems like you don't necessarily need to have something that's so big and overwhelming that it's going to kill them. It can be something little that is threatening.
Yeah.
Because of the circumstances.
Yeah, and it sort of plays into that resource battle as well. Like one of the things with Tucker's kobolds is, well, they just don't let you sleep. Which in D&D Pathfinder is a big thing because a lot of abilities and stuff are tied to, or you get X amount of uses between having a full night's sleep.
Yep.
If you're constantly being interrupted, like
you're going to lose out on this. All of a sudden, that cleric's got no heals left. So if one of these kobolds get lucky, and one of them is eventually going to, and gets a spear into it, that's a solid chunk of damage.
Yeah.
Like, depending on your level. But it's not coming back.
That's right.
Because you're not getting the chance to stop and rest.
You can't sleep it off, and the cleric can't heal it off, so you're pretty much up shit creek.
So you get a bit of attrition, and like, it's probably worth letting your players know that that's a style of game they're going into, because it's a very different one, and how they'll play is different.
But it's also fun to let them stumble into it as well.
Yeah.
If you've got a group of players that's very cocky and they're like used to just murder a hobo on their way around, and you throw them into a situation where that's really difficult, it can be very eye-opening for the players.
Well, you see, I'd sort of play off that sort of thing by giving a general blanket warning of the enemies are going to treat this as war, not sport.
Mm-hmm.
And this game's going to be deadly, so that no one's surprised by the fact that it's deadly. The manner in which it's deadly is surprising.
Mm-hmm.
But giving that sort of thing of be aware that, because there's different types of deadly. There's thematic deadly, and there's this system is just, it's deadly, and players sort of roll that in.
Mm-hmm.
So, but making the case, I think the bigger portion there is things you're coming up against are going to treat this as war. And if they haven't really thought about that, they just go, oh yeah, it's going to be hard fights.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think there's still enough there to get people surprised by what's going on.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, they're going to pour oil down that corridor and try and light it on fire and burn you out if you start hiding at the bottom of a hole.
Yep.
Like, you are a threat to their existence, and they are going to treat you as such.
That's right. And they're intelligent, so...
Yeah, to a greater or lesser extent. And it's only got to be to use the D&D stat equivalent, 10 is average.
Yeah, 10's easily intelligent enough to know we don't go near them when they look like they're scary, but if we have the advantage, we can attack.
Exactly. And playing up cunning versus just raw intellect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They may not seem smart, but they know how to mess with things that are bigger than they are, because they do it all the time.
That's right. They're small. They're used to it.
They're small. They live in the Underdark or in cave systems that have got far bigger, deadlier things than these, and they're still here.
Mm-hmm.
So steering into that is an interesting way of pulling it out too.
Well, if we come back to our list a little bit, for me, there's one point in the day where you're the most vulnerable, and it's when you're asleep. And there's a bad guy that for me is the most scary bad guy I think of all, and it's Freddy. Because he gets you while you're sleeping, and there's nothing you can do except for stay awake forever, which you can't do. So if you think about things that are weird, like imagine the person that came up with Freddy, and the monster that gets you while you're asleep, but it doesn't get you while you're asleep, it gets you in your sleep.
Yeah.
And it kills you, and then that happens to you. It's a very weird concept. It's hard for me to think of the person when they came up with that, they must have been thinking what were they even thinking? How do you come to that conclusion?
I reckon someone's playing Changeling, except I'm pretty sure Changeling's newer.
But it's such a good idea, and it's so scary. From when I was a kid and I watched Freddy, I didn't sleep for. I'd think the word Freddy and I wouldn't sleep.
No.
He's so, and that's the thing too. The thing that gives him power is people think about him, so that makes it even more scary. So it's for me, if there's anything that's the scariest thing I can think of, it will be that something that gets you while you're asleep. And I think Freddy is a great horror movie in the regard that the heroes. I've never seen the original one. I've seen later ones, and the heroes are always on the back foot because what do you even do? Yeah. They're just always on the back foot. You just need to. They have that sense of hopelessness, but they also are hopeful that they can somehow work out how to overcome it. They can somehow work out his weakness.
It's how many amphetamines can I take?
That's right.
Without killing me.
Yeah. they try. The whole time they're trying to work out what he is, where he came from, how to defeat him. But they're also constantly aware that if I fall asleep, and I eventually will, he will kill me. And it's that, I don't know. He just gives you such a really good sense of hopelessness.
I think you've touched on a good thing there of points of vulnerability. And
to sort of drop off away from the horror inspirations for a sec, though I'm sure that some of these have got something to say. The idea of it can get in. Like, you've secured your room to sleep in, but you don't know what the thing is yet. Like, the immediate thing that jumps to mind, running back to D&D Pathfinder, shadows. They move along the walls.
They're almost two-dimensional.
They almost two-dimensional. They can fit through gaps. They can slide under doors. And when they kill somebody, they create another one of them. So, yeah, if you want something that's similar to a zombie apocalypse, in terms of the escalating dread because it's converting more and more and it just creates more, but you don't want to do that, go look at Shadows. I highly recommend it, even if you kit bash into something else in a different game system. Just the fact of it creates more by killing.
I've used Shadows before. They're quite a cool creature in D&D Pathfinder. Sort of that verse. They're very good.
The thing to watch out for with them though, and it's watch out for in the sense that it's going to have a major impact on your world, is that they get a snowball going. Like if it's killed 5 things in town, now there's 6 of them running around. They can and it's like one hit kill for like a commoner.
That's right. One hit kill for a commoner, and then there's another shadow that's the same strength as it. Yeah. Not another commoner shadow.
So having that awareness in mind of, like, the players have to get on top of this quick, and it helps set that pace that you're talking about. Even if the game, like the play itself, isn't happening quickly, it's now in the players' minds that there is a time factor here. The problem is if it snowballs, like, there's a point of like, do we nuke the city? Like, if that's an option to them.
Yeah. How do we nuke the city?
How can we destroy all these things at once, or how can we get these people away? And that could be particularly if you're looking at a transition point into a broader, like a broader campaign from, say the idea is there is a great and powerful necromancer who is in the background of your story. The players aren't dealing directly with them yet. The shadows are the advanced troops that are going into towns and stuff and like eviscerating key people in a general mix of the population to cause havoc and grow their numbers. And then will start coming the other bits of undead to take over in the like. If a shadow infestation gets going, that is a reasonable point at which to start dropping a big good that is going to have to be tied down by that, so you don't have to go and do what it was going to do. It's like, all right, originally, Lathander has sent down a solar from on high, or a planetar, or whatever, insert divine being here. And its original job was to go stop that guy. This is now a bigger problem that has gotten out of the player's hands, but he's got enough information to say, you're going to need to do this and this. Go and do it while I clean up this mess. This is your fault.
Yep.
And have that sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's an interesting transition point from, what are CR1 creatures, I want to say, maybe CR2 creatures?
I guess CR3, because I dropped them on you guys reasonably late in the game.
Yeah.
But they're pretty brutal because they've got touch tax and
they
do ability damage.
They're deceptively low CR for something that can, if you're playing the sort of game where the things in the world impact the world beyond the combat that they appear in, it quickly becomes a major issue. And so it's worth keeping that sort of thing in mind.
But reading through the monster manual sometimes and looking at like shadows, for example, are a very strange enemy that people don't talk about very often. So reading through the monster manual every now and then in games that have them, and looking at the strange creatures that people don't really use very often, and sort of reading them and understanding their abilities and sort of looking at a way that could work in a sort of scary or maybe just makes the situation hopeless. That's a very interesting way to look at things.
Like undead's generally a really good place to start with that, because there's a lot of undead that don't get used that have things like convert those that kill into undead. Like I'm thinking, let me get the right way around. I think whites as opposed to rights.
Yeah, whites do it. Yeah.
I think whites do it. Vampires, things like that, stuff that can turn can be a problem. Vampires not so much because they're a little bit more discriminating in terms of who they turn.
Usually, but if you play games like Wham, for example, has some feral vampires.
So you got that option there to worry about as well then. But yeah, even there's a lot of things that float around in those monster manuals that like people often get when they run, particularly if they've played a lot but not run much, or they're playing with new groups and stuff, tend to fall back on things. Like, orcs, goblins, that sort of stuff is fairly, to a lesser, kobolds to a lesser extent, unless it's really dungeon delving. People, goblins are more out and about raiding town sort of thing, and it's easy to use as a starter thing. Another one that jumps to mind is bullywugs. They're the toad men things from in swamps.
Yep.
So between those, you sort of got swamp, caves, caverns, and forests / raiding years as you move from goblins and orcs. So having a good idea of that. Reading the particularly the newer ones, like I know the 5th edition D&D one's pretty good at it, and the Monster Compendium, I think it was for 4th edition, did a bit of it too. I'm not sure, I don't think the Pathfinder's quite as good as it, but they did a really good job of here's sort of how it all works together. Like if you went and look at goblins, it's like here's a goblin, a bugbear, and a hobgoblin, and this is how it fits together. Like, and you have a look at it. It's all sort of, rather than being all split across like alphabetically or something like that, it's all together. It makes a good point. And read more than just the initial one.
Yeah.
Because I guarantee if you go and read like the goblin section of the current 5th edition monster manual, and can't walk out of that with an idea of, all right, we're going to do this. This is going to be it. It's in the back of my mind. It may not be fully fleshed out, but I've got an idea and I can run with it.
Yeah, definitely.
I would be amazed. Pick a random page in a monster manual, and unless you pull like a CR20 creature at random, you're probably going to be able to come up with something just by reading it. Like the amount of stuff in there, like the random flick through the monster manual has given me so many couple of session things that.
That's right. Sometimes you one drop to space things out. So having a flick through the monster manual and picking monster A, and you're like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. It's got some random abilities that players probably haven't dealt with in the past, something like that. You very quickly have a quick session to tide things over.
Yeah, and as James said, like if you turn towards your undead and your outsiders, using D&D as an example, there's a quick way to get a couple of ideas for things for running a horror game. Like your outsiders come, like they're weird. Mind you.
Well, you can run a horror game with outsiders that's like not necessarily an evil horror as well. Like it's like a, I don't know, one of those ones that's hell bent on actual justice, and it's like maybe it's coming for you because
the Modrons is always funny.
Yeah,
I think it's the Modrons. They're the fake ones, aren't they? The true neutral.
Yep.
And they're just there, or lawful neutral or something like that. And they go on a march every 10 millennium or something to catalogue everything. And if you get in the way, they're just like, like march over the top of you. And then they have no interest in it. They just catalogue anything. You're there in a fight with like some demon or something, and a bunch of Modrons just rock up and start asking you questions, like taking notes.
Yep.
Like you can get weird.
Definitely. Like the one that I was talking about before, there's the ones that are hell bent on justice. And it's like maybe you did something and you didn't even realise it was that wrong at the time, but it sort of snowballed up the cosmic ladder and it's turned into this big thing. And you killed someone who wasn't supposed to die or something. And one of the divine beings of time come and try and deal with you.
The Shadows example from before. Like you just didn't do the job properly.
Yep. And suddenly now this thing's trying to kill you, and you're like, what the friggin' hell is this thing? And what's its abilities? And they have some strange abilities, the outsiders, and they're cool. They're very cool.
So using those as like fodder outside of those fantasy games as well is really good. I suppose we'd be remiss if we didn't touch on New Changeling.
Yeah, New Changeling's quite scary.
Yeah, and it's a case of it's a big factor of the dread. Like you can definitely get hints of terror and stuff, but the whole thing is suffused with just this. I'm not going back. Fuck that noise. I'm out. I don't care.
Yeah, Changeling has that whole hedge going back to the Fae that stole you, the Fae that tortured you for however long or whatever. And it's that sort of fear that you definitely don't want to ever end up back in the hands of your torturer that tortured you for God knows how long. And you've got that sort of innate distrust of everyone because you're like, well, they have agents on Earth and it could be literally anyone. And it's like,
they're tricksy and precious.
And like they're vengeful.
Like they could, at any turn, like this could be, like it's the perfect example. This could be it, and it's also the case of, well, we're in this alone.
Mm-hmm.
Like no matter, like we have different changelings that we run into, and like you sort of got your little coterie yourself.
Yeah, even if you join up with other changelings, you
like
still
you
sort of have
can't
that
100% trust that one of them's not going to get caught.
That's right.
And then spill the beans.
That's right.
Because
and
you've been through it before.
That's right. And some of you may even have that point where you've like made characters that have been through it before. I mean, we played a campaign where we went through it 4 or 5 times. We kept falling for it. We kept thinking we'd escaped, and then it would turn out we hadn't. And then we'd escape, and then it would turn out we hadn't. And then we would escape, and it would turn out we hadn't. And we went through it like 5 times. And I think it ended up in a character death.
Yeah, you killed me.
Yeah, because it seemed like you were in on it, or you directly were. I can't remember, but I definitely remember pounding your face into the snow.
Yeah. The GM at the time hadn't, like I was back to visit from college or something, so I was there only for a couple of sessions or something like that, and it was a case of, threw me in there as just like another changeling that happened to be in the same place you guys were trying to escape.
Yeah.
And it, put some mark on me that was like, I think it was a snow globe, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that was the big arc that kept messing with you. It's like every time you broke out, it was in a snow globe or something like that.
That was true, yeah. Every time we broke out, we were in a different snow globe.
So the fact that I had some sort of like snow globe iconography on me, or like a image on the shirt, or I can't remember exactly what it was.
I can't remember, no.
But it was something that was not immediately obvious until like I took a jacket off or something like that, and there was this mark.
Yeah.
And because you'd be sufficiently, messed with, you all went postal.
Mm-hmm. I think it was at the point where we've been gaslighted so many times, and we're in that sort of fear of we can't keep going through this. And we've been captured and recaptured and recaptured, and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And we were sort of presented with this evidence of like this, it wasn't even real evidence, but we thought it was real. We grabbed onto it and we were like, all right, well, if he's going to get us recalled, we're going to kill him and we're going to get away. And we sort of just, outright, blatantly just murdered you in the snow. Yeah. And then we got out and it's like, oh, actually, this was the time you really got out, and now you've got to deal with the fact that you killed someone because of it.
So the changeling is very much a case of the overarching general dread, which can either be a central theme or just there. Mm-hmm. Like it can be the point, and generally it will turn into the point just because of how pervasive it is. Mm-hmm. As long as those who are playing it are aware. Like can honestly say, like if you've just picked up sort of changeling out the back of after playing any of the other sort of new WOD sort of stuff, mm-hmm. and just sort of read the abilities and stuff, if the players in GM aren't invested in what it means to be a changeling, like it'll just be a weird set of combat rules.
Yeah, that's right.
And abilities. So I can't say it'll always end up being that sort of thing, but if anyone's any of the, like, it will only take one, and it'll take that turn. Like one player or the GM, particularly if you get a player and the GM both picking up on the whole theme of changeling, mm-hmm. there's nothing that's going to be able to stop it.
It's a very interesting game.
Yeah.
And a lot of the modules for it are really focused around the political side of the game, which is also very interesting.
So there's big sort of, you're not there to curb stomp combat your way through.
No, you're really not there to win.
Yeah.
You're more there to survive. It's very much a survival horror game in my opinion. Yeah. But you're definitely not there to, you're not gonna beat the fag.
So it's live as long as you can. Hopefully you die of old age at some point.
Hopefully you die of old age before you get sucked back in.
Because they're looking for you.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. Like you always have that ever-present knowledge that your keeper, like the changeling that took you, or the fae that took you, is looking for you and wants you back for whatever reason that they made you.
Hell, they might not have even remembered that you existed at the time, but once they noticed you were gone, mm-hmm. how dare it?
That's right. Like, I made that thing and it's left. Well, I'm coming for you. And it might even be that they don't even know who you are when they bring you back. It's just like, you did the thing, so you ran away, so you deal with the punishment, and I'll make an example of you. And it's like, oh my god, I was already like so traumatized by these events. It's a very good system. I recommend anyone who wants to sort of look into that survival horror aspect of
and it's a very
gaming.
It is also a very social style of game too, in terms of like party interaction, like based on like that dread and like shared fear and things like that. It's the fear binds together pretty quick.
Yeah,
but it also has that. Yeah, but one of these guys could get caught, and they know a lot about me. So how open am I with? Like, we're bound together because we need mutual survival. But yeah, it's a very interesting balancing act. Makes some interesting stories.
it makes for some sort of messed up Sophie choice decisions along the way, and I think one of the core campaigns has a choice where the changelings work out that they can sacrifice a kid to prevent all other kids in the area from being taken, and it's like that's one of the big campaigns, and it's sort of like push you in this position where you're like, well, would I sacrifice a child to protect all the other child? Like, in this situation, does the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few? Like,
not to mention the general flip side of it is like, is this true?
Is this true, and who's going to do it?
Yeah.
Is this true, and do I have to kill a baby?
I suppose to touch off of that as well, the Sophie's Choice style thing, Hags, D&D, come to mind. Take in turn kids and things like that. In that case, it generally is, you can play out in a sense of, I suppose, mind control in general also fits in here as well. Like, is the horror coming from the fact that in protecting yourself, you are potentially harming innocents, or even things that aren't innocent but look at. Like, that thing looks like it's only a 12-year-old kid.
Yeah,
but that 12-year-old kid's been dead and gone for a long time.
Yeah, that whole demon-possessed child sort of thing. Like, sort of, how do I fight that? Like, how do I come to grips with the fact that I'm literally punching a kid?
Yeah, like, there's that style of like horror as well.
It's fun. It's sort of interesting to think of the horror of I don't know, your own action. I don't think your own action is what I'm trying to say. Like, the horror of being a human, like the horror of humanity, I guess. There's certain things that, you would find absolutely appalling to do, and it's sort of, but you have to do it in this situation. So I was like coming to grips with that and sort of exploring that as a horror element.
Yeah, and this is sort of branching into that area as well. You need to be careful with your table. Like, some of it's obviously not as much, but you might not want to do, oh shit, we've got to fight these kids. If there's somebody at your table who may have been, beaten as a child or something like that.
Yeah.
The idea.
You also don't want to have a table where you kill babies if someone's had some kind of traumatic experience with losing a baby or something like that. Like, so you've really got to read your table.
Yeah.
Know their history.
And you're not always going to know these things sort of, but you need to have some degree of social awareness of someone's obviously not getting into this, there's a problem, and being able to go, yeah, we're stopping there, we'll go, not necessarily, obviously this isn't working. So even if it's like 3/4 of the table, if you're starting to get into that psychological horror side of things, and you've got a person who is distressed, cut it. If it's a case of, look, maybe the game's not there and the other people, and you've got nothing there, happy to continue some other time, yep, go nuts some other time. But if you're moving in that sort of space,
that's right.
Yeah, it's not worth putting somebody at the table through.
Well, everyone's here to have fun, so you don't want to. Everyone's there to have fun, so you don't want to put someone through so much discomfort that they're like traumatized by your game, let alone the experience that they went through. So yeah, you've really got to be aware. So then that's like, this is a particular example, but that's something to keep in mind when running/playing is, depending on what you're dealing with in the games, how
mature your content or how.
I mean, it could be worthwhile talking to your
Yeah.
players at some point about is there a line that you will not so
Yeah.
much you won't cross, but you don't want to see crossed at the table? Like,
Yeah,
you know,
and that could be.
we often draw the line that we won't allow, like sexual violence in our games. Like, just never
no.
mention it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to. It's just never in our games.
Yeah.
And I tend to just, if I've ever sat at a table and someone's brought it up as part of their game, I tend to excuse myself from that table. I don't want to explore it as a topic. I don't want to play it out as anything. Whether it's something that's happened to a character in their past and they tell me about it, and like I know it happens in the world, but it's not something that I want to have to live as through my character.
And that's
And I definitely don't want it to happen at the table in play.
Oh God, no.
Like, that's a real red flag. I wouldn't excuse myself from that table. I would GTFO as quickly as humanly possible.
And it's more than reasonable should you come across that situation to be able to go, look, nah.
That's right, yeah. I
Or-
am not comfortable.
Yeah, either I'm not comfortable or that's it. Sorry guys, I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
This is not something I'm interested in. Or, like if it's coming from one of the other players, maybe it's worth having a conversation with the other players as opposed to the one that's going to go, hey, is this something that you guys are actually on board with? Because that was weird. Because if everyone's a little bit weirded out or, distressed or anything, right, then it might be time to have the conversation with that. Like, go, hey, cut that shit out. We're not interested in it. If you're looking for that, go elsewhere. Or, if you persist, we're just going to drop you up.
Yeah, you won't arrive at our tables anymore.
Yeah, so...
But yeah, it's definitely like, even when especially when you're in a horror game, there's a lot of lines that you can cross very quickly without realizing it, and it's worth thinking about it and possibly having a conversation beforehand about, is there any lines that we shouldn't cross? Like, you don't necessarily need to know their past, but like, there's things that people don't want to deal with.
Yeah.
Especially not at the gaming table. Like, it's meant to be fun.
Yeah.
There's horror, and then there's, oh my god, I really don't want to be in this building with you guys.
Yeah. So, be aware. And be aware that everyone's line's not the same place as you is probably the biggest thing. But I suppose, I know you've said the exact words multiple times. Read the room. If you're there. Even if it's not you that's doing something that's causing the discomfort, if somebody's there, well, guess what? Man up and take the chance to go, stop. Obviously something's not.
That's right.
You don't need to be the GM to make that
That's
call,
right,
and you don't need to be the player who's going through the distress to make that call. If you notice that they may not be in a position where they feel comfortable to do it. Well, guess what? You noticed, so it's your job to suck it up and go, hey.
That's right. And this is probably the only thing we've really spoken about tonight. Is being very much focused on the GM. But I mean, this is a point where you can definitely step up as a player and make a difference and say, no, we need to stop for a minute. Something's not right, and we'll talk about it. Or we won't talk about it. Something's not right. Cut it.
That's it. So, and some of that is also a case of, like, it might seem fine to, like, particularly the reason why I specifically mentioned other players in particular, is the GM's got a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes.
That's right.
They may not, like, if it's just somebody looking a little distressed, they may not notice.
Well, if it's just someone looking a little distressed, they may think that's the intent. Like, they look a little stressed, as in, are they stressed because this is something that they're uncomfortable with, or are they stressed because it's a stressful environment that I've put them in?
Yeah.
And if they read it incorrectly, but you're reading it differently, it might be time to go, hey, what's going on? We need to stop.
Yeah. All people here. So, and just be aware of it.
Well, I don't think we have a whole lot of people in chat tonight. I have had been keeping a bit of an off eye on it, but I mean, if you're there and you've got any questions, definitely ask. And we've got Lou Vittel back. Well, but anyway, if anyone's got any questions in specifics to what we've been talking about, feel free. Otherwise, any other questions that you might think we can discuss tonight. We did have another topic to cover, but it's not really. I mean, we can go into it if there's no questions that pop up. Well, let's start covering off the the beginning session, should you run a Christmas themed, a Halloween themed, an Easter themed episode, a camp session?
Yeah.
Is that something that you should do every time?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would jump to is no, you don't have to do it every time. Like just because there's a holiday event or something like that doesn't mean that you're locked into it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't have we've got to do a Christmas special every year.
That's right. Well, you're not Doctor Who.
No. So like if you've got an idea for one and people seem interested, yeah, sure, go nuts.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is, I suppose, kind of rolled into that question is it a one shot? Is it just a particular component of your ongoing campaign?
Mm-hmm.
Is it your characters from the ongoing campaign, but it's effectively a separate world? Like you snap through an alternate reality for this session. So no, it's going a little bit nuts. Anything can happen, and we just continue on next week. You've got grounding for your characters. You've got knowledge of how everything works and everything. You can push on, but
yeah, I think. So it's like, is it appropriate to come into the current session, or is it somehow appropriate to the campaign that we can shift it into a different like to make it appropriate?
Yeah.
Is it worthwhile? Is anyone interested?
Yeah, there's a
lot of questions that you can ask very quickly to determine whether you should do it.
Like if you're stuck at the bottom of the Underdark, probably not time for a Christmas special.
That's right.
Mind you, you might go, you might just go, oh, we're going to play a different game.
Well, I was just thinking, like, it could also be maybe this whole arc has been very dark, and it's just time to do something a little bit silly to sort of
or the
bring,
beach episode.
Yeah, like it's time for the beach episode. It's time for the silly
palate
party
cleanser.
episode. Like it's time for the we just chill out. So it's sometimes it is appropriate, just in the sense that you've been going through so much doom and gloom, you need to put some hope into the campaign.
Yeah.
Well, why not do it right now? It's Christmas. We've got a Christmas themed episode. We can just do that, or Easter, or whatever it happens to be.
The other thing that weighs into it as well a little bit is maybe not so much for Halloween really, but for things like Christmas and Easter or anything that's tied to some sort of public holiday. You've got the problem of people go away and things, so you might not have your whole party there anyway.
That's right.
So it's the time to bust out something a little bit different, because we can't continue. We might not be able to continue with the campaign because we're missing, 2 or 4 players or something. You just want to have a bit of pull out, a random system and do something. Like, do you want to Sam and Dean it up and go play a Halloween special because there's only 2 of yous there?
Do you want to fight Santa?
Do you want to fight Santa? All I can think now is Futurama.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Yeah. And how much do you still do it? Like, how much of it is like a lot of it, holidays and things tend to be, religion based. Like how far do you steer into that side of it, or do you just go with the secular edition? All things to sort of have a think about before doing it. People's preconceived notions and stuff like that of those particular holidays and stuff. So,
and then it's how much do you go into the whole thing anyway? Like I did a Christmas themed episode campaign in my Rogue Trader game, where basically you guys just woke up with gifts in your room, which were bombs, and there was a saboteur on the ship. Do you remember that one?
was I in that one?
I don't remember.
I don't think I was in that one.
I don't know if you were in that one or not. Maybe you weren't. But basically there was a saboteur on the ship who was leaving presents for all of the crew, all of the important members of the crew. And just scratched a random NPC out and said, he woke up and opened his present and kaboom. And then it sort of, they were then on this thing where they were like chasing around these servitors that were dropping off the presents and
Totally not elves.
Totally not elves, and it's just, it was a bit silly, but at the same time, it had meaning in the setting that there was a saboteur, and it was more setting.
It was holiday adjacent, whilst
it was a little bit silly, but at the same time, it turned the tone a little bit because we'd just gone through this arc that was very depressing, and they lost a lot, and it brought it back. It may not even have been playing with you guys. I think it was playing with the other group, because I think the thing that before it was all the server. It was that the head tech priest on the ship had started overproducing murder servers because he was going to take over the ship.
Ah.
And one of the characters stumbled on it when he turned off. I think they'd been very quickly losing cargo bays.
Cargo bays.
Yeah, they were very quickly losing cargo bays. They're like, each session I was like, you can carry X amount of cargo. You can carry 200 cargo. Now you can carry 190 cargo. Now you can carry 180 cargo. And the number kept going down, and eventually it was like, I think I got down by 5 points before someone was like, no, you said it was this. And I was like, and they're like, I'm going to look into it. And they went down and they're like, these cargo bays have all been turned off as like forbidden access. And they went into one, it was just rack upon rack upon rack of murder servitors. Like, what? So yeah, you just turn into, read the room, as I've said a million times tonight, and work out whether it's appropriate, whether it's time to maybe have a shifting tone.
It's a good opportunity for some of those circuit breakers for things, and as we said, if you've got like people away and stuff, it's also a good chance to have a crack at different systems. Like you might have a bit of a sillier theme of game, but getting the idea of how another system works, particularly if it's a quick like rules light sort of system.
Yeah, like WOD's a pretty good one. It's pretty easy to make characters in WOD.
Yeah.
Anything that has very random character generation.
Like a low-powered M&M maybe. Mutants and Masterminds for those at home. And so it gives you the opportunity to try some of those things out. And maybe someone goes, hey, I actually like this system. And runs it in the future, or even you do at some point as a GM. If you give it a crack. So plenty of options there.
Another fun one is you go meta and you have like a Christmas event in your campaign, but they're dealing with like something horrible that's happening adjacent to Christmas. So it's like someone's kidnapping children for some kind of horrible ritual, or like Halloween, but there's real monsters on the street. Buffy, actually, it was quite an interesting episode.
Well, can you tell the difference between what's the real?
Yeah, what's the real monster and what's the noble in a costume? And what do you do if you accidentally kill the wrong one? There's things that you can do that make the festival, like you can celebrate the festival in game, but have it get like session appropriate, game appropriate, session appropriate.
It's not like it's unprecedented to have Wintermas.
That's right. It's Warhammer Fantasy and it's Christmas time and something really bad's happening, but it's still Christmas time and everyone else is celebrating, but you've got to deal with the big threat that's happening under the sea.
Someone's giving out all these toys to little kids. It might just have some weird stone in it.
Yep.
So things are going a little sideways.
So yeah, there's definitely things that you can do, and it really depends on your group as to whether or not, and also your game. Like if you're running a very silly game already, you can do whatever the hell you want. But if you're running a very serious game, it's like, well, is this going to break the immersion, or is it going to be,
is it too far out?
Is it
or is it not far out enough?
Is it the welcome relief that we needed from the current sort of session, or sort of, you need to really think through the ramifications of having a session like that.
Yeah.
In terms of what sort of works in those sort of things, it's really the sky's the limit. I mean, I have some things jotted down, but they're really obvious.
Pretty much. Like in most cases, dial it up to the extreme and it actually becomes a problem.
That's right.
Is almost always the...
Yeah, that's a good one. Dialing it up to like the nth degree and then looking at the ramifications of that. Throwing like, I think Supernatural did the whole Krampus thing.
Yeah.
Looking at the origin of the holiday and how you can play off that is interesting. A lot of I don't know if a lot, but there's a lot of holidays seem to have roots in some kind of ritual or end of season or something like that, which you can play off some kind of horror themes and some kind of weird themes. And if you look back at the original ritual versus the current day, I don't know, you can often find a bit of inspiration there to run a game around it, whether it be mystery or whether it be a genuine thing. Find a gift for the king.
Yeah,
whatever it happens to be, there's always something. Finding the appropriate gift for the gods.
whatever thing there might be. Given we're not getting anything out of, from chat.
Well, chat doesn't really have any questions, and I feel like we're pretty close to we're pretty much wrapped up.
Yeah. So tune in next week, guys.
I think we're going to be talking about a lot of questions that were raised on Facebook in the group, predominantly around involving character backstories in your campaign.
Yeah.
So that'll be at least one of the segments, and then we'll talk about something else.
Yeah.
Probably a little bit more player related, since we just spent a session, and we're also going to spend another bit of the session on GMs.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to try and
balance it out
a little bit. Maybe we'll talk about character backstories and how to make a character backstory that's relevant and going to give the GM some hooks. So we can talk about how the GM should use the hooks and how to generate hooks for the GM.
Yeah, both sides of that would be probably be the decent chunk of that one.
Yeah. Feel free, if you do have any questions, to message the page on Facebook. You can hit us up at Double Crit on Facebook. I have a page and also have a group. Easy to message the page. You can also hit us up at our email address and everything, which is down in the description. We post to YouTube usually Sunday morning in Australian time. Could be Saturday night. Just depends when the video finishes processing. I generally just hit process and let it go and upload straight away. So, yeah, we'll keep you posted. Any tips or feedback for the show, feel free to let us know.
Ready?
Thanks, guys.
Catch it.